Marvel. Starting with the super soldier serum. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76 The Illuminati. When Qin Xiao and Tony walked out of the ward, Ivan Vanko's double curse mixed in Russian and English came from inside. The police outside thought that Qin Xiao and Tony had done something to the prisoner, and they were very nervous. In fact, what made Ivan Vanko most uncomfortable was not that Tony finally escaped palladium poisoning, but when Tony showed his new arc reactor and told its origin. Ivan Vanko felt that his father really lost to Howard Stark, which was the most difficult for him to accept. In fact, no matter how big or small the contribution to a thing is, the person who was driven away will always feel that it is all his own credit, and describe the person who drove him away as worthless. Ivan Vanko has always believed that Howard Stark is a businessman who is seeking fame and reputation, not a scientist at all. All his achievements come from his father and other scientists. So when he learned that Tony Stark's father had invented new elements decades ago and greatly improved the power of the arc reactor, but was limited by the technology at the time and could not manufacture it, he was a little bit unable to accept it. Tony, this guy is now a living arc reactor. I don't know how many people are watching him. The stick in your hand will be taken by others, Qin Xiao said to Tony faintly after walking out of the hospital. Qin Xiao said this after a lot of inner struggle. From the beginning, Qin Xiao felt that his biggest advantage was omniscience. Although he had seen the trailer of Loki before crossing and knew the existence of the Time Variance Administration, he always believed that with the system in his body, he would definitely not be discovered by them. But what Guyi said changed Qin Xiao's mind. He still wouldn't think about how to change the plot, but he wouldn't follow the plot honestly. Let your heart do it. Since the butterfly wings have already flapped anyway, just flap them more naturally and freely. So when Ivan Vanko was left in the hospital, Qin Xiao knew that if he followed the original plot, he should still be rescued by Justin Hammer. Qin Xiao certainly didn't care about fighting again in the end, but he chose to stand on the side of a friend and gave Tony a little warning. After all, Ivan Vanko's main target is Tony Stark. Notify Nick Fury and ask him to solve it. The two stood on the beach at the entrance of the hospital. Tony thought for a long time and asked tentatively, "To be honest, I absolutely believe in Nick Fury in protecting the world, but don't forget, Tony, he is backed by the World Security Council, which is full of politicians from various governments. You know how much the US government wants your armor." The two discussed this issue when they first went to the Middle East. At that time, they thought about forming a secret organization that would be independent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers in the future. It was used to solve some problems that were blocked in certain places. In a big way, it would protect the world more unconstrained. In a small way, it was the last time the two of them killed the Ten Rings gang in the Middle East, and Qin Xiao went to Mexico alone to uproot the drug lords. Of course, Qin Xiao was more after their money that time. In fact, I even thought of a name and made a mobile phone software. Tony opened the desktop of his mobile phone, and there was an app called Illuminati on it. I don't know when Marvel will fill in this Easter egg of Iron Man 2. After all, Iron Man is dead, so you can fill it in yourself. But the members will definitely be different from those in the comics. After all, this is the movie universe. Oh? Qin Xiao looked at Tony's phone with interest. I haven't fully developed it yet. In fact, it is similar to a chat plus task sharing software. Discover a crisis, upload tasks, and solve them nearby. Of course, it is mainly for confidential communication. Before going to the Middle East, it can be said that Qin Xiao planted a seed in advance for the independence of the Avengers in the future. But after going to the Middle East and seeing the massacre, Qin Xiao's thoughts changed a little. He really thinks that some organizations and some people should be dealt with directly in extreme ways. After meeting with Ancient One, Qin Xiao's thoughts became more, but now these are not important. What's important is that Tony and the other two have reached an agreement. Now I can fill in the name of Ivan Vanko. Tony opened the app on his phone and said, "You can directly draw a cross on his name. He should have no tomorrow." Qin Xiao turned his head and glanced at the hospital and said, "Boom." As soon as the voice fell, A huge explosion occurred in the hospital opposite. The power of the explosion not only blew up a hospital with dozens of floors in half, the power of the shockwave swept the entire street. Qin Xiao was quick-witted and turned to protect Tony. He blocked a large amount of steel and concrete in the shockwave, as well as many messy things that were fatal to ordinary people. The fragments produced by the explosion were all blocked, but the shockwave still pushed the two people who were caught off guard into the sea. Puff. Qin Xiao pulled Tony, and they both surfaced and spit out a mouthful of seawater. The entire hospital was completely blown up by the bomb, fell sideways, and hit another building next to it. The streets were full of dust, vehicle alarms, and cries for help in the ruins. Save people first. Tony looked at the hospital with complicated eyes. This Iron Man with a strong sense of responsibility blamed everything on himself again. Qin Xiao looked at him, said nothing, swam to the front of the car they drove that was slowly sinking to the surface of the water, punched into the trunk, and directly pulled out Tony's Mark V. With the scanning function of Tony's iron armor and Qin Xiao's inhuman strength, the two cooperated with the government personnel who arrived later and rescued all the people trapped below one by one. Not counting the minor injuries, there are 52 seriously injured people, 37 dead, including a pregnant woman, 5 children. One is missing. Tony's face was terribly gloomy and reported a few numbers to Qin Xiao. Qin Xiao's face was also not very good. This kind of thing, in the news, is just a number. But you still look at those dead lives, especially there are children among them, which is definitely a shock that makes people's blood boil. Ivan Vanko? Qin Xiao said this name without thinking. If only one person is missing, it can only be him. Chapter 77 The Mastermind. There is nothing unusual about Justin Hammer, whether it is personnel contact or his financial inflow and outflow. Qin, your speculation is correct. This matter has nothing to do with Hammer. Okay, I see. It seems that Justin Hammer doesn't need to be paid attention to anymore. All the agents in France have been dispatched. If they leave France with people, we will receive the news as soon as possible. This time the enemy is very professional and fierce. They will not leave any room for maneuver. You should be careful. You too. Finish the mission and go back quickly. See you in New York. See you in New York. Qin Xiao ended the call with Black Widow. This time the commotion was so big that he and Tony speculated that it should not be Justin Hammer who made the move, but Qin Xiao still asked Black Widow to check it out. Sure enough, everything was normal on Hammer's side. Who is it? Qin Xiao frowned. At this time, there was a sudden knock on the door, and Qin Xiao got up to open the door. Tony came in directly and poured a large glass of water and drank it in one breath. Then he exhaled and said, a policeman woke up and said there were 5 intruders, 3 white people, one of whom was a woman, a black man, and a black man. They were very fast and incredibly strong. He fired 4 shots but didn't hit anyone. From his description, it sounds like the person they are facing is you. 5 super soldiers. Qin, remember what happened in Mexico last time? The man with the metal arm. I suspect they are all together, a powerful hidden organization. They have drug dealers, super soldiers, and maybe a powerful team of scientists. When Tony first said that the policeman said there were 5 people, Qin Xiao felt familiar. Now that Bucky was mentioned, Qin Xiao's mind was ready to recall 5 super soldiers, Hydra, and the Siberian base. They activated the 5 super soldiers in Siberia, but didn't send Bucky to show up. Could it be that it wasn't Alexander Pierce who did it? Just like the name Hydra, the Hydra organization has many branches. Alexander Pierce, the former director of SHIELD, is just the leader of one of them. Qin Xiao remembered that Baron Stecker, who created Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver with the Mind Stone, had been in Europe for a long time. Could it be him? Qin Xiao was confused. Even if he was powerful now, it would be useless to face the situation. Although you know a lot of plots from watching movies, you don't know where these Hydra bases are hidden, not to mention finding them. Washington, World Security Council. Alexander Pierce's office. Francis, that son of a bitch, who made him activate the Siberian base privately. That's one of our trump cards. Damn bastard. Now the whole of Europe is full of SHIELD agents. He will kill us. You'd better be careful. Stecker. Alexander Pierce was surprisingly angry, completely different from his usual calm and steady image. Don't worry, My old friend, you are the boss of the World Security Council, and most of the SHIELD agents are your people. What should I be afraid of? Baron Stecker's voice sounded quite calm. In fact, it is true. The biggest threat to SHIELD is that most of the people in it are theirs, and there is no organization like the Avengers watching them. At this moment, Hydra has not had any natural enemies. Do you think Nick Fury is a fool? I know him. He is not so easy to fool. I don't know what other cards he has. Last time we agreed on the Insight project. This is the most important thing at the moment. Once we are exposed now, we will be attacked by the whole world. If that time really comes, then I can only be at ease as my chairman and slowly wait for the opportunity to come in the future. Do you understand? We have waited for so many years, and finally there is a chance to fulfill our ideals. We can't be exposed at this time. Maybe Alexander Pierce's knocking on the table and speaking reason touched Baron Steckel a little. He began to speak more seriously, and no longer had the tone of indifference. I understand the seriousness of the matter. To be honest, the arc reactor is indeed very tempting. I have also been tempted before, but now is not the right time. I will let all my men hide, not to provoke the people of SHIELD, and do my best to find Francis, to settle this matter and ensure our safety. Baron Steckel's guarantee stabilized Alexander Pierce's emotions a lot. He took a deep breath and said, "If he is exposed, I will kill him as soon as possible, for everyone's safety and for the glory of Hydra. Long live Hydra, long live Hydra." New York, a golf course. Justin Hammer was standing on the grass with his butt sticking out and swinging an angry club. Ivan Vanko, the duck that was about to be caught, ran away, which made him very depressed. In particular, he had arranged with the police and the prison in advance, and spent a lot of favors and money for this. He wanted to get Ivan Vanko out as soon as he was imprisoned. In the end, he got nothing. Relax, Justin. Golf is an elegant sport. You can't treat it as Tony Stark's head. Sometimes, if you use too much strength, you won't reach your destination. A middle-aged man slowly walked towards Justin Hammer. Senator Stern, I remember that a week ago you gritted your teeth and asked me to speed up the development of the armor. Why do you look so calm now? Justin Hammer was in a bad mood and didn't have a good tone to this senator who had cooperated with him a lot. I have been in the Senate for so many years and learned the truth. Now the world is a world of win-win cooperation. For example, you and I, the armor project is the same. Anger can't solve any problems. Let me introduce you to a friend, Mr. Francis Aubrey. Senator Stern took a step to the side, revealing the person behind him. This is a middle-aged man who looks about 50 years old. He is well-maintained and his hair is meticulously groomed. Francis is one of the most pure-blooded nobles in Europe. He has unimaginable potential in Europe. Stocks, political elections, large energy projects, whatever you need, he has a way, of course, including rescuing a genius from Siberia in Monaco. Senator Stern grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. I got home late. I'll write one chapter first. Wait for me to go to dinner. There is another chapter that should be almost done before 12 o'clock. Don't wait if you go to bed early. Let's read it together tomorrow. Chapter 78 Cooperation. Europeans, especially those in the upper class, pay attention to the purity of their bloodline. Justin Hammer knows that many old-school European nobles like to hide in their castles and follow the most ancient etiquette. They look down on the new nobles with impure bloodlines, and even the Queen of England is among their contempt. Many modern literary works and movies about vampires use this group of old antiques as character settings. It is just that group of people who control a lot of resources in Europe. But Justin Hammer doesn't care about these. He is an American, and Americans are practical and realistic. Let bloodline go to hell. But Ivan Vanko is something Justin Hammer can never give up. The miniature arc reactor is his only chance to turn over and ride on Tony Stark's head. Put down the golf club, bow slightly, and greet this old antique from Europe with perfect etiquette. You know, our project has been going on for a long time. We have the best weapons and equipment in the world, sensor systems, etc. The only thing missing is the small nightlight on Stark's chest. Senator Stern raised a finger and tapped his chest, playing a joke that he thought was humorous. Then he pulled Justin Hammer and said, "Francis is very interested in the armor. Of course, He has no ambition for orders from the Ministry of Defense. He just wants some finished armor to arm his bodyguards. But there are still many opportunities for cooperation in the future, such as new energy. If you are interested, you know that nobles like them don't like to stand in front of the stage. That would be inelegant. Justin Hammer was of course interested. The application prospects of the micro-arc reactor are really huge. It would be a shame to only do military industry for this epoch-making invention. Immediately, under the matchmaking of Senator Stern, the two began a warm exchange. Subsequent cooperation will be carried out slowly in the future. Today, Francis's people will bring Ivan Vanko to Hammer Industries. Of course, the technology of the arc reactor cannot be shared. Francis's people will be watching the scene to prevent Justin Hammer from taking the reactor technology from Ivan Vanko. After this incident, Francis will invest in a new energy company in the United States, and Justin Hammer will come forward to build the world's largest new energy company. These conditions are all Hammer can't refuse. After the chat, he hurriedly left. He wanted to make preliminary preparations for Ivan Vanko's arrival. Watching Justin Hammer hurriedly leave, Francis said to Senator Stern, "You found a good chess piece. He is ambitious but not very smart. It is a good choice to let him stand in front of the stage. I will rely on you to take care of me here in the future." Stern laughed and said, "Pierce is looking for you all over the world. If he knew that you were hiding under his nose, he would probably be so angry that he would jump out of the office." Francis also laughed. He can't get into trouble now. The Insight plan still depends on him to promote it. Dr. Zola is really a genius to put a gun on the head of everyone in the world. Such a plan that can control the lives of people all over the world should be mastered by people like us, not conservative people like Pierce, right? Francis' words made Stern laugh so hard that even his back teeth were exposed. In the face of the temptation to control the whole world, he chose to cooperate with Francis without hesitation and betrayed Alexander Pierce. But he didn't notice that Francis, who was also laughing behind him, looked at him with the same eyes as if he were an idiot. The people of Hydra here have sent Ivan Vanko to Justin Hammer's company. Qin Xiao and Tony are still searching in Monaco. Ever since Ivan Vanko appeared, or to be more precise, since the second person who could make a micro-arc reactor came out, the pressure from the US government on Tony has been increasing. At first, Tony chose not to hand over the technology, but he also declared that no one could make an arc reactor for at least a few years. This seized the attitude of the government and the military a little. At least in Tony Stark's hands, it was equivalent to being in the hands of the United States. Although the government did not get it, at least Iron Man is an American, right? But now there is a second one. Especially that person was rescued by a powerless person. The government is not so easy to fool. If this technology is obtained by the Russians, it means that the United States will be under the threat of the fighting nation for many years to come. There is no political factor involved here, but in the world of movies, the fighting nation is always evil. Tony Stark receives several calls from Pepper and Rhodes almost every day, conveying to him the pressure from different places. "Tony, this is not a solution. What are you going to do?" Qin Xiao asked, slumped on the sofa in the hotel. He has been busy looking for clues and Ivan Vanko in recent days. He has arranged for Jane, Thor and Daisy to go back first. Only Tony and he are left in Monaco. "I didn't know before, but now I have a new idea." Tony just hung up Rod's phone. "Rod, he is a military man. I trust him. If I give him a set of armor, it can not only make the government stop bothering me temporarily, but also ensure that the armor will not fall into the hands of others. The most important thing is that the Illuminati needs new members. The two of us are far from enough. Now we can only rely on SHIELD for intelligence. Your idea is not bad. Anyway, we are just looking for it here. It is better to go back together first. This way, we will have more resources." Qin Xiao sat up from the sofa and said, "Yes, that's what I thought too. Those people took Ivan Vanko away. It's impossible for them to hide him all the time. The armor is their goal. I have asked Jarvis to pay attention to the whereabouts of various precious metals in the market, including the raw materials for manufacturing the arc reactor and the metals needed for the armor. Unless those people own various metal mines and have mature extraction and smelting technology, as long as they start making armor, I will find them, Tony Stark said confidently. Chapter 79 Locking the target. Since it is mass-produced, Hammer's armor naturally cannot use precious gold titanium alloy as raw materials like Tony. Hammer Industries' warehouse has everything needed to make some ordinary alloy metals. However, a large amount of palladium is needed to make a micro-arc reactor. A missile only uses less than 0.2 grams of precious metals, and he does not have a large amount of inventory. Moreover, although Ivan Vanko cannot produce new elements, in order to catch up with Tony Stark's reactor level as much as possible, he still adjusted the speed like in the movie. The upgrade of the arc reactor requires more palladium. However, the inventory in Hammer Industries is only enough for the weapons orders for the Ministry of Defense this year, so Hammer began to purchase a large amount of palladium in the market through a small company under his private name. Although Hammer has carefully purchased in batches through different companies under his name, Jarvis, who has been monitoring the market, was still discovered at the first time. Soon, the bosses behind these small companies were exposed. Then about the purchase of palladium by Hammer Industries in the past 5 years, they received weapons orders. Even the palladium required for the orders that have been signed this year, as well as the possible orders and palladium required by the Ministry of Defense next year. A series of data were listed in front of Tony. Justin Hammer, is it really you? Tony opened the data that Jarvis sent to his mobile phone yesterday and muttered. No matter how he looked at it, Justin Hammer didn't seem to have such courage. Hey, fish finder, what do you think? Qin Xiao was standing by the French window and looking at the fish under the river. Originally, the base in New York was going to be placed on a farm in the suburbs. Qin Xiao donated $1 billion to the Avengers project, with the idea that he would be the boss if he brought money into the group. He kept pestering Nick Fury to give him this secret base under the river. In his words, this is the style of a secret organization base with $1 billion. Yes, it is style. For this style, he often imitated Nick Fury standing by the window with his hands behind his back, looking at the fish outside motionlessly. Therefore, Tony gave him the nickname of a fish finder. What should I think? I'm not Yuan Fang. Let's wait until Natasha comes back. She went to Hammer Industries for an interview today. Qin Xiao rubbed his eyes and sat back down at the table. Who is Yuan Fang? Tony took out a bag of potato chips from somewhere and asked while eating. The Chinese version of Watson, who has solved many big cases with the Chinese version of Sherlock Holmes. Speaking of Sherlock Holmes, Tony, I remember watching a movie. The guy who played the protagonist Sherlock Holmes and the great detective Holmes looks a lot like you. Do you have any cousins who are actors in Hollywood? Speaking of Sherlock Holmes, Qin Xiao looked at Tony's face and suddenly said with a bit of bad taste, no. Tony thought about it seriously and said, you really need to change your taste in watching movies. This movie that I haven't heard of must be a big bad movie. That's right, especially the male lead. He is just like a fool. I have never seen a worse actor, Qin Xiao said with a strange smile. Tony subconsciously felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. Finally, she could only say to Qin Xiao angrily, you should go see a doctor. Don't face a group of people all day long. You have a problem with your brain. Qin Xiao was about to say something back. The gate of the base was opened. Natasha strode in wearing a red dress. Qin Xiao quickly stepped forward and pulled a chair for Black Widow to sit down. He also poured a glass of water considerately. After hanging out with Daisy in Monaco for a few days, he felt an inexplicable sense of guilt when he saw Black Widow. Look, God, how can there be such a beautiful woman? I bet $1 that Justin Hammer, that bastard, must want to keep her as his personal secretary. Black Widow is an agent, especially after such a big thing happened in Monaco. Although she didn't know that Qin Xiao was traveling by the plane, she must know that he had a woman with him in Monaco. But Black Widow didn't delve into this matter. She just rolled her eyes at Qin Xiao, sat down and drank a sip of water and said, in fact, I didn't see Hammer, but I spent the whole morning in their company and found a lot of things. Tony, is there a floor plan of the Hammer building in the computer? Tony quickly tapped the keyboard a few times to turn the screen around. Here, Black Widow pointed to several locations on the floor plan. These underground areas were originally used as research bases for the armor development project with the military. and Hammer Industries has invested a large number of scientists and resources here. But a few days ago, he suddenly and temporarily withdrew all the personnel here. All scientific researchers including security guards were evacuated, and this place became a restricted area for Hammer Industries. I used 2 cups of fine coffee to sneak into the monitoring room of the building, and found that all the surveillance videos of the entrances and exits of the underground research institute, elevators, and even the parking lot had been deleted that afternoon. Combined with the list of companies purchasing palladium elements discovered by Jarvis, I'm sure he is manufacturing the arc reactor, or Ivan Vanko is in the Hammer building. Unfortunately, you need a special pass to go down now, and no one knows who has this authority except Justin Hammer. Black Widow told all of her gains today in one breath, and it was almost certain that Ivan Vanko was in the Hammer building. So what are you waiting for now? You are the most powerful intelligence agency in the world, with contacts, agents, combat teams, special forces, etc., and you should conduct a surprise inspection there immediately. It just happened that you caught the person red-handed. Tony spread his hands and said. Black Widow rolled her eyes helplessly. That is the experimental base of the military cooperation project. You should understand what this means better than anyone else, otherwise, you go and convince more than 2/3 of the senators? What should I do then? Otherwise, I will put on my armor and break in directly. Anyway, it has been locked, so why bother with so many details? As long as it is confirmed that Ivan Vanko is here, it will be easy to deal with. Not impossible. Black Widow is not a pedantic person, but after saying that, she still rejected this plan. But we have some smarter ways that can achieve the same effect. What way? Qin Xiao and Tony asked in unison. Then the 2 superheroes will need to be a little aggrieved and perform a large-scale action scene, Black Widow said with a smile. Chapter 80 Awkward Acting. Scene: the rooftop of a building 30 meters east of the Hammer building in Manhattan. Starring Qin Xiao, Tony Stark, director; Natasha Romanoff, screenwriter. Natasha Romanoff, Qin Xiao, Tony Stark. I just received a call from Rhodes. Hammer is now installing weapons on Rhodes' new armor at the Air Force Base. As soon as we find Ivan Vanko, Rhodes will immediately control him. When Qin Xiao and Tony just came back, Tony found Rhodes and talked for a long time. The result was that Rhodes got a set of armor on behalf of the military, and there was an additional war machine on the list of the Illuminati. Everything is ready. What about you two? Are you ready, heroes? Black Widow's voice came faintly from the headset. Of course, Tony answered very confidently. Qin Xiao turned his head and looked behind him, nodded and said, "Come on, action." Black Widow slapped her hand on the table and hit the board. Bang! As soon as Black Widow finished speaking, the thrusters on Tony's armor started at full speed, directly hitting Qin Xiao's abdomen, smashing the guardrail of the rooftop alive, and rushed out of the air. "Tony, you are a bastard. I'm not ready yet." Qin Xiao roared at Tony in the air. "The director has called for the start. You have to learn what is professional, my friend. We are enemies now," Tony said while pulling Qin Xiao's arm, turning in the air, using the power to convert kinetic energy, and directly threw Qin Xiao to the ground with his back. Bang! The ground at the entrance of the Hammer building was smashed and several cracks appeared visible to the naked eye. Huh? Didn't fall down? Tony's armor appeared above Qin Xiao's head with a tail flame. The thrusters on both hands flashed a dazzling white light. 2 laser cannons were aimed at Qin Xiao and blasted down. "Damn it, Tony, you bastard. This part is not in the script." Qin Xiao did not dare to shout loudly, so he could only mutter quietly, and dodged the laser cannon with a roll, and ran towards the Hammer building. Tony did not say a word, and directly smashed the glass of the door with the armor and rushed in. As soon as the man entered, the wind whistled from the side, and a coffee table was grabbed by Qin Xiao with both hands and hit towards Tony horizontally. Crash! The glass shattered all over the floor, but Tony was also hit hard against the side wall. "You learn so fast for the last minute." Tony's mumbling voice came from the headset. Then Tony stood up with the armor and pointed at Qin Xiao with his right hand. A line appeared on the screen in the armor mask. Tony took a look and read it out with a frown. "Qin, I think of you as my most trusted friend, but you actually want to discuss business cooperation with Justin Hammer, that clown. Do you know that I hate this pretentious bastard the most?" The line is annotated with the feeling of being betrayed by a friend, sad and angry, with a slightly angry tone and a sense of powerlessness. With such a long paragraph of annotations, Tony read the line as if it were plain water. A sigh from the Black Widow came from the headset. Look at Qin Xiao again. Seeing Tony standing there pointing at him, he threw away the coffee table with only one shelf left. That's just a business cooperation. It has nothing to do with personal feelings, and we haven't signed a formal contract yet. Is that why you threw me down from a high altitude? I really want to kick it hard. Ah. Qin Xiao was halfway through his words when a girl who seemed to be working at the front desk on the first floor ran out from between the two of them, holding her head and screaming, stepping on broken glass shards. Kick your ass hard, Tony. After the girl ran over, Qin Xiao finished his lines. Black Widow, who was hacking into the surveillance camera of Hammer Corporation in the base, covered her face helplessly while watching the screen. Kick my ass? I'm Iron Man. Do you think my armor is as easy to defeat as those rubbish produced by Hammer Corporation? Tony finished his lines dryly again. And then, tick-tock, the sound of the wall clock ticking seconds echoed between the two of them. A gust of wind blew up several documents, which floated past the two of them. It seems to be your turn? Tony's voice sounded in the headset. You changed the lines, Tony. I don't know how to continue. The last sentence you said just now was added by you. Qin Xiao said softly into the headset. Gentlemen, our lines are meant to make it sound more realistic to others that you two are fighting. Now that everyone on the first floor has run away, stop acting and just force your way in. Black Widow gritted her teeth and said, she wanted to slap herself hard. Letting these two people act was the most failed decision in her career as an agent. It was so shameful. In the Underground Research Institute, the vibration from above immediately put the people below on alert. The 5 super soldiers left the only female to watch Ivan Vanko's work. The remaining 4 people joined a group of guards invited by Hammer from outside and stared at the elevator entrance. What they didn't notice was that just as they left, Ivan Vanko smiled and glanced at the female super soldier at the door, and the computer quickly switched to another interface. Both hands began to type quickly on the keyboard. Elevator entrance. With a loud bang, the elevator fell directly at an abnormal speed. The elevator door was smashed and a burst of dust rushed out. Swish. The guards raised their guns in unison and pointed them at the elevator entrance. Bang. With a loud bang, the elevator door was violently smashed open, and a golden red figure rushed into the crowd against the elevator door. Da. A group of guards pulled the trigger subconsciously, but unfortunately they were knocked out by the impact of Tony's armor and the impact of the elevator door before they could fire a few shots. Before they could react, the ceiling rumbled again. Qin Xiao fell from the sky, and the two of them were like wolves entering a flock of sheep. They rushed back and forth several times, knocking the group of guards to pieces, and they lay on the ground and couldn't get up for a while. There were hundreds of sets of ready-made armor densely packed around the research institute below. Tony knew that these should be the armor jointly developed by Justin Hammer and the military. He even had detailed information on these armors. As a single-soldier combat armor, it was actually pretty good in all aspects, but it had no energy and could only be charged to perform some simple actions. But some of the armors had a faint blue light on their chests. Arc reactor. Tony and Qin Xiao looked at each other. They had found the right place. The two were about to go inside to look for Ivan Vanko. A figure flashed, and 4 strong men with expressionless faces and dead eyes, wearing combat boots, camouflage pants, and only a vest on their upper body, appeared in front of the 2 super soldiers. Chapter 81 Ivan Vanko's counterattack. Each of the 4 super soldiers had a blank expression on his face. His eyes were as cold as those of a cold-blooded animal, and he was being stared at by the 4 of them at the same time. Tony felt as if he was being stared at by 4 cobras, with their slippery scales and rustling tongues. Thinking of this, Tony in the armor couldn't help but shudder. Don't look at me like that. Your girlfriends, or your mothers, aren't on my list of romantic lovers. Bang, bang. He was responded with 2 extremely dull punches. The 4 super soldiers, in pairs, rushed towards Tony and Qin Xiao. Qin Xiao wanted to see how big the gap between these super soldiers and himself was. He used less than half of his strength to fight with the two super soldiers. Tony just said something mean, and the two super soldiers took the lead to hit him, and he was beaten back several steps. At this moment, the thruster flames spurted out, and he was about to face the two super soldiers head-on. Qin Xiao shouted from the side, "Catch them first, leave them to me." Tony heard Qin Xiao's words. The two arms of the armor shook, and the man accelerated diagonally upwards in midair and rushed directly inside. The two super soldiers were about to chase, but Qin Xiao took two hits on the back and grabbed the belts of the two super soldiers in front of him with one hand. "Come back to me." He pulled the two super soldiers to the ground and turned around to fight with several super soldiers. Look at Tony again. He accelerated past Qin Xiao and others and flew directly into a corridor. Just when he flew to the door of the innermost room, the only remaining female super soldier came out of the room leisurely. She closed the door of the room and hooked her finger at Tony contemptuously. At this time, Tony did not have the habit of sympathizing with women, and raised his palm and fired a laser cannon. The female super soldier dodged sideways, but blasted a big hole in the door behind her. "Ivan Vanko," Tony said in a tone of "You are really here." Ivan Vanko raised his head and gave Tony a meaningful smile. He continued to type on the keyboard in his hand. In the hall outside, white light flashed in the eyes of one armor after another. Tony had no intention of fighting with this woman. He was just thinking of accelerating past her and grabbing Ivan Vanko inside as he did just now. Unfortunately, the height of the corridor was too low and the width was only enough for 2 or 3 people to pass side by side. As soon as Tony accelerated, the female super soldier jumped up and kicked the wall with one foot, using the force to grab the legs of the armor, while Tony had just accelerated and the driving force was not enough. As soon as his legs landed, he shouted and smashed Tony's entire armor to the ground. The entire armor fell to the ground with a bang. The female super soldier took a step forward and stomped hard on Tony on the ground. Tony's hand and foot jets sprayed a stream of flames, and the whole person slid back a few meters before leaving the ground. Floating in the air, she said, "Okay, you made me angry. Since you're a woman, I can spare your face." As soon as she finished speaking and before she started to attack, she heard a whistling sound from behind. Tony subconsciously looked back and saw at least a dozen armors that were much taller than him rushing in. Looking at Qin Xiao, after fighting for a while, he found that the strength and speed of these super soldiers were not as strong as he had imagined. They felt a little weaker than when he first started. I don't know if it was because of the serum absorption or because they were frozen in Siberia for too long, which caused them not to fully recover their strength. After being hit by many punches and kicks, he almost understood the strength of these people. Qin Xiao was about to go all out and solve the battle at full speed. Suddenly, he heard several sounds of the Gatling gun barrel turning. Qin Xiao was quite familiar with this sound. He had played with this kind of gun when he was in Mexico. Whether it was shooting or stopping shooting, there would be a moment when the barrel would turn. The brain just reacted, and the body didn't have time to look back to see what happened. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The barrage of bullets shot at him densely. In just a moment, Qin Xiao felt that every inch of his back half was hit by bullets. God knows how many guns fired at the same time to achieve this effect. Qin Xiao watched the skin and muscles of the super soldier next to him being torn apart bit by bit in the barrage of bullets. The whole person fell straight to the ground like a bloody man. There were 3 more super soldiers in front of Qin Xiao and another comrade in arms. After the first wave of bullets, these people dodged to the sides. Although many parts of their bodies were covered with blood and flesh, they completely avoided the area covered by bullets. Qin Xiao took several steps forward. He felt a burst of tingling pain in the parts of his body that were not covered by the combat uniform, especially the back of his head, as if someone had flicked his head with an iron finger countless times. He felt that his whole body was stunned by bullets. "How many bullets did you shoot at my back?" As if to cooperate with Qin Xiao's words, Qin Xiao's voice had just fallen. The Gatling gun on the right arm of a war armor fired twice again, shooting out the only 2 bullets left in his arm. It hit Qin Xiao's back of the head steadily, and his head nodded forward twice like a chicken eating rice. Fortunately, the weapons in this group of war armors were all equipped with a small magazine, and they had not been modified to put a large number of bullets in, otherwise, Qin Xiao would have been shot for at least 2 minutes without stopping. "Are you done?" "It's my turn." Qin Xiao listened to the sound of the Gatling gun barrel spinning, and suddenly turned his head. He saw that there were many war armors standing against the wall behind him. At least more than a dozen of them came out and lined up. It must be them who shot at him just now. And as Qin Xiao turned his head, more than a dozen war armors took a step back, and more than a dozen war armors behind them took a step forward, and the Gatling gun barrels on their right arms began to rotate slowly. "Come on, let's see who's faster." Qin Xiao kicked with his left leg, crushing the ground with one foot, and rushed towards the group of armors in front like a cannonball. On Tony's side, a large group of armors roared in the narrow passage. Not only Tony, but also the female super soldier was caught off guard. The two were torn apart by a group of armors. In the chaos, Tony saw a armor enter the room and soar into the sky, breaking through the ceiling and flying out. Another armor followed closely behind, picked up Ivan Vanko, who had synthesized a notebook and held it in his arms, and soared into the sky towards the big hole that had just been broken. "No!" Tony shouted, and was about to find a way to get rid of the armors around him. Who knew all the armors around him suddenly flashed red light on their chests and issued a piercing alarm. It's too late. There's another chapter later. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82, Hammer's Death. It was not just Tony's side. The same was true for Qin Xiao's side. Qin Xiao saw from the corner of his eye that more than 10 armors were holding unknown metal parts and soaring into the sky. And all the armors around Qin Xiao, whether they had run out of bullets or were shooting at Qin Xiao, had red lights flashing wildly on their chests. "Tony, go!" Qin Xiao shouted frantically in the headset. Tony didn't want to leave now, but there were at least 7 or 8 armors surrounding him. Tony was frantically using the thrusters to speed up and prepare to escape from the entanglement of several armors. "I want to leave too, but there seem to be too many armors that like me. How about you go first?" "Believe me, I should be more troublesome than you." Qin Xiao looked at the at least 20 armors surrounding him in front of him and said faintly, When Tony met Ivan Vanko, he asked Jarvis to inform Rhodes directly of the news. Rhodes, an honest man, was not kind at times. He waited until Justin Hammer and a group of people modified the system of the armor and completed the weapons and equipment before he directly attacked and arrested Justin Hammer. Jarvis sent Rhodes a message, and Tony went down the elevator in the lobby of the first floor of Hammer Industries directly until he saw the full video of Ivan Vanko. The evidence was irrefutable. Even if Justin Hammer finally gave up Senator Stern and Francis, he would be charged with colluding with terrorists. The explosion of Monaco Hospital was so big that no matter what the purpose of the person who did it was, he had been defined as a terrorist by the international community. It was a pity that Justin Hammer had just been escorted out of the base. A sniper bullet took Hammer's life directly. The shooter was wearing the uniform of a soldier of the base. After firing a shot, he got on a fighter plane and flew away. In less than a minute, the fighter disappeared in the radar signal of the base. World Security Council, in the office of Alexander Pierce. Senator Stern, who had been talking to Justin Hammer with such eloquence and arrogance, stood trembling in front of Alexander Pierce's desk. The phone on the desk began to vibrate. Stern suddenly looked up and stared at the phone on the desk in front of him. Alexander Pierce quickly picked up the phone and just said, Then he raised his head and said to Stern, Hammer is dead. I have wiped your ass clean. If it weren't for the fact that your position in the Senate is still useful to us, you would be the next one to have your head blown off. Facing Alexander Pierce's vicious tone, Stern exhaled deeply. He was relieved and almost collapsed to the ground. I really don't know what's going on in your stupid head. You actually went to work with Francis. Do you really think that you two can control the Insight Project? Do you really think that if I die, you can sit on the leader of North America? Stupid. Alexander Pierce picked up a folder on the table and smashed it fiercely on Stern's forehead. Stern didn't dare to move. Let's go. Remember, speed up the promotion of the Insight project in the Senate. Otherwise, Alexander Pierce didn't say anything more. Stern nodded and agreed quickly, and hurried out. In a manor somewhere outside New York, 3 super soldiers who escaped death because of Qin Xiao sat blankly on the chairs. They let the people around them use knives to cut open the wounds on their bodies, and use tweezers to directly clamp out the bullets in the muscles and bones. There was still no expression on their faces, as if the knife was not cutting their bodies. Francis sat on an antique sofa, looking at the 3 expressionless super soldiers. He recalled the process he had just described about meeting Qin Xiao and Tony Stark. It seems that Qin Xiao is more interesting than the armor. Such powerful combat power and defense are really the result of the super soldier serum. I'm starting to be interested in you. In the moment before the explosion of the hammer building, Tony still pulled Qin Xiao out of the building. Tony's new weapon, the super strong laser beam, directly cut through all the enemy armor in the corridor at the last moment. When he rushed out, he happened to meet Qin Xiao, who was wielding a battle armor as a weapon and breaking out of the siege. The 2 of them finally rushed out of the building together before the explosion. It's a pity that the main target this time, Ivan Vanko, still escaped, and he also took away a lot of battle armor and Justin Hammer's inventory. From the metal accessories that Qin Xiao saw in the hands of some battle armors before leaving, Tony quickly analyzed that it should be a set of battle armor specially made for him by Ivan Vanko. He did that in the cave in Afghanistan, making a bunch of seemingly unrelated things and finally assembling them into a set of battle armor. Combined with those super soldiers, Ivan Vanko should have been under house arrest to make reactors and battle armor. It's just that Qin Xiao and Tony's intrusion gave him a chance to escape. It's a pity that Hammer was assassinated directly. Otherwise there would be a chance to dig out from him who was behind it. 5 super soldiers. Justin Hammer doesn't have such strength. Black Widow has reported this matter directly to Nick Fury. Qin Xiao was the only one present who knew that it was Hydra who did it. But it shouldn't be Alexander Pierce. You know, in the movie, Alexander Pierce has always been in a very forbearing state. With Dr. Zola's Insight plan, he would not risk being discovered at this time. On the contrary, the killing of Hammer at the end was very similar to Pierce's approach, only he had the strength to kill a person in the United States, or even in a military base, and leave safely. If Ivan Vanko didn't know where he was hiding to secretly build a battle armor, and there was Loki in the sky who was always watching Thor's every move, Qin Xiao might have gone to meet the former director of SHIELD right now. It seems that after these 2 things are over, it's time for Captain America to come out early and meet his old enemy Hydra together. There's nothing to regret. Ivan Vanko's target is me. He can't leave without anyone noticing with so many battle armors. He won't do anything else unless he kills me. As long as I stand up, he will definitely come out on his own. I'll contact Rhodes. The Stark Expo will provide them with a platform to showcase their military strength. The last chapter, a little late. I'll go to bed early today. The chapter tomorrow morning will be a little later. There will still be 4 chapters. Chapter 83, Fighting at the Expo. At the Stark Expo, although the incident of Hammer Industries caused the military and Hammer's armor project to be completely aborted. Originally, they only lacked some arc reactors as energy, and at least there were some armors to support the scene. Now, after Ivan Vanko's disturbance, even those armors that supported the scene disappeared. But the government still spent a lot of money and used the armor Tony gave to Rod to earn back a wave of face for the government. In addition to Rod's armor that was modified to be almost unrecognizable, the government also used this time to create dozens of sets of armor that were beautiful outside. To put it bluntly, it was a group of plastic shells with iron sheets. The chest directly used lead lights as arc reactors. Although fighting is definitely not possible, standing still and saluting with Rod also gave those people who don't know the details a heavy sense of security. Of course, these people are watching the broadcast at home because Tony wants to lure the snake out of its hole. Now most of them are military personnel, except for some staff responsible for filming the broadcast. The others are either military soldiers or government agents. I really don't know what's in the minds of those government people. They knew there would be danger today, but they still arranged so many media to come and broadcast it. Qin Xiao shrugged his shoulders in the backstage and said puzzledly, "So this is why you can't become a politician. My father once told me that if you want to be a qualified politician, you must first learn to talk in your sleep without telling a single truth." But it is precisely because of the broadcast that Ivan Vanko believes that all this is true. Tony stood next to Qin Xiao in his armor. He had already publicly stated that he would attend the government's armor exhibition today. "Okay, it's almost my turn to go on stage." Tony. Qin Xiao opened his mouth and shouted, always feeling that he had forgotten something. "Huh? It's okay, you go first." Qin Xiao thought about it and didn't find anything wrong. Tony looked at Qin Xiao strangely. The armor mask closed, and flew into the sky from the back, and finally fell to the front, landing steadily beside Rhodes. "Oh, it's Tony Stark, our Iron Man. Is he here today to compete with our war machine to see who is the strongest armor?" The host provocatively passed the microphone to Tony's armor. "In fact, I'm here to check my homework and see how good my imitators are at me." "That's right." Tony's language was as sharp as ever. In response, before the host handed the microphone over, War Machine's right hand had already stretched out several gun barrels and pointed them at Tony in front of him. "Oh, look at our Colonel Rhodes, who got a promotion from the armor, and was a lieutenant colonel at first. He really has the qualities of a soldier," and he directly responded to the provocation with a gun. The host directly handed the microphone over again. "Get out of the way," Rhodes' anxious voice came. "What?" The host thought he had heard it wrong. "I said get out of the way. It's not the armor I'm controlling. I'm being controlled by someone, Tony. I'm locking you." "Damn, my armor is out of control," Rhodes shouted anxiously. At the same time, Qin Xiao slapped his head and finally remembered what he had forgotten. Rhodes' armor was also modified by Hammer and his men. Not only the weapon system, but also the control system of the entire armor, which is the same as those controlled by Ivan Vanko. Regardless of shocking the world, Qin Xiao shouted to Black Widow and a group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, "Evacuate, let everyone evacuate. Rhodes' armor is controlled by Ivan Vanko." "Tony, Rhodes' armor is controlled. Take him away from this place." When Qin Xiao's voice sounded in Tony's headphones, the sound of machine guns was heard outside. "You should have thought of it earlier. Now everyone knows it." Tony's body sounded clank clank clang, obviously using the armor to block a lot of bullets. Although the people below are all well-trained soldiers and agents, they are no different from ordinary people in front of the armor. It's just that when evacuating, everyone will be orderly and much faster. Even so, most of the people present did not evacuate the venue. After attracting a circle of firepower, Tony knew that this was not a solution, so he took off quickly under the bullets. "Qin, I won't attack Rhodes directly. Find a way to destroy the damn reactor on Rhodes' chest." Qin Xiao ran out and saw Tony taking off, while Rhodes' armor was raising its arms and shooting at Tony. Just when Qin Xiao wanted to go over, Rhodes' armor also started the thrusters at full power and began to chase Tony quickly. The weapon system on his body began to lock on Tony's armor with full power. A lot of gun muzzles appeared behind him, and several micro-missiles were aimed at Tony. "If you want me to destroy his reactor, you'd better go around and come back, or find a way to turn me into Hawkeye," Qin Xiao said as he looked at the two tail flames that were spraying quickly in the air. At the same time, in the distant sky, a group of armors that took off with tail flames broke through the air. A group of armors followed Tony and Rhodes and flew towards them quickly. "Damn it, how many armors did he take away last time? Think of a way, Qin." A group of armors followed behind him and fired at Tony without thinking of the consequences. While he was dodging, he had to be careful not to take them to where there were people. The pressure increased for a while. "What kind of shitty idea can I think of? You should install a rocket launcher on my ass first, or a hot air balloon will do." Qin Xiao stood on the ground and jumped up and down. "I should have gotten you something that can fly." "Damn it, why didn't you remind me earlier?" Tony's voice was accompanied by violent explosions and machine gun fire. "You should have taken the initiative to say this kind of thing. I'm a Chinese. I'm shy." "Don't talk nonsense. Most of the people here have left. Bring them back and bring them to me. I'll find a way to knock down Rhodes first." "Don't you have a disposable laser cutting line?" Qin Xiao looked at the empty surroundings and shouted loudly, "Here I come." Tony in the air suddenly pulled up straight into the sky, and when all the battle armors were under his feet, he turned sharply and flew quickly towards the exhibition area. "Are you ready?" "I'm coming." "Come on." "Wait, guys, shouldn't you ask for my opinion?" Rhodes' voice came from the headset. "Shut up, traitor," Qin Xiao and Tony said in unison. Chapter 84, Strengthened Whiplock appears. After arriving at the expo, Tony suddenly dropped from mid-air to a height of more than 2 meters above the ground. Tony and a group of armors flew straight towards Qin Xiao. The dense bullets behind made Qin Xiao involuntarily put out his hand to protect his head. The density of the attack made Qin Xiao unable to open his eyes. Waiting for Tony to whiz by his head, he could only reach out and grab a armor by feeling, and threw it hard to the ground. "Damn, wrong." Qin Xiao looked at the armor on the ground that was still stretching out his arms and shooting at him. With a shake of his right hand, a tang sword was directly inserted into the arc reactor of the armor, and the armor was directly shut down. "Can you look more accurately?" "I don't have a protective mask." "Try again." The two of them were madly complaining to each other, while Tony quickly stretched, turned around, and rushed towards Qin Xiao again. This time Qin Xiao did not disappoint Tony, and Tony's armor just flew over his head. He jumped and threw down Rhodes' armor. In order to prevent Rhodes' armor from being disobedient, Qin Xiao directly stabbed Rhodes' reactor with a tang sword. With a click, the ordinary metal alloy on Rhodes' outer layer was easily penetrated, but the gold titanium alloy inside held the blade of the tang sword tightly. "It seems that I have to earn some points as soon as possible to upgrade my weapon." Qin Xiao lowered his head and muttered, and punched the handle with all his strength. Puff! The tang sword sank more than 10 centimeters in an instant. The blade directly hit Rhodes' t-shirt, almost disemboweling Rhodes. Fortunately, there was only a thin layer of gold titanium alloy in the reactor. If it was changed to another position, I'm afraid Qin Xiao would not be able to punch it directly. Fortunately, this thin piece of gold titanium alloy, otherwise Qin Xiao might not be able to control his strength and directly stab Rhodes to death. Rhodes, how are you guys? Have you solved the problem?" "It's fine, but I was almost stabbed to death by Qin Xiao." Rhodes looked at the blade on his chest and took a deep breath carefully, fearing that he would stab himself to death if he used too much force. "You two had better lie on the ground and look at the stars for a while, and don't stand up." As soon as Tony finished speaking, he circled in the air and landed not far from the two of them. When the armor behind him fell one after another, Tony stretched out his arms and turned around. 2 red laser lines quickly turned twice, and the surrounding armor was directly cut into 3 neat sections by the laser. Qin Xiao looked along the place where the laser swept, and even the trees 100 meters away were cut into 3 sections. "This move is really good. Can't it last a little longer?" Qin Xiao sighed. "There's no way. The ultimate move is like this. If it can be used casually, it can't be called a ultimate move." Tony shrugged his shoulders. "I say, can you pull out this knife first?" "It seems that the villain hasn't appeared yet," Rod said depressedly while lying on the ground. "Okay." Qin Xiao came over and stepped on Rod's chest. With the harsh sound of metal cutting, he pulled the tang knife out of his chest bit by bit. "Is it over, Tony? Are you all okay? Is Rod okay?" Pepper, who was wearing a white professional suit, suddenly appeared, accompanied by Black Widow. "Pepper, why are you here? Didn't I tell you to stay in the company and not come out?" Tony asked in confusion. "You didn't tell me that you were here to be a bait today." "I thought it was a normal expo. There was an accident here. Of course I have to come and see the armor flying all over the sky." "Wait, are you blaming me?" "You told her?" Tony looked at Black Widow. "Can someone help me take off the armor first?" Rod interrupted at the right time, but unfortunately no one paid attention to him. "In this situation, what else can I hide? Besides, she has already arrived at the scene." Black Widow spread her hands to show her innocence. "Tony, don't change the subject and blame others." "God, next time you make a decision, can you tell me in advance? I don't want to sit in the office and watch TV like a fool before I know what happened," Pepper said forcefully. "I'm not trying to make you worry, Pepper, you know this is dangerous." "Hey, I want to get up." Rod's voice was ignored again. Tony and Pepper were arguing, Qin Xiao and Black Widow were watching the fun, and no one cared about him for a while. "Oh, your reason is really good. You are afraid that I will worry, but I can't sit still in the office and run here directly." What's the sound next time? An unusually sharp sound of breaking through the air came from the sky. Ivan Vanko is here. You guys first. Da. Tony didn't finish his words, and the armor in the air had already aimed at the ground and fired. Qin Xiao dodged and stepped over to protect the two people. You go first. Without bothering to ask the two people's opinions, Qin Xiao directly clamped the two people horizontally under his arms, one on the left and one on the right. With a big jump, he jumped hundreds of meters straight, and then put the two people down. Pay attention to your own safety, and run farther. After exchanging a glance with Black Widow and giving each other a cautious look, Qin Xiao stood up and returned to the battlefield. As expected, Tony, who had used up his ultimate move, was no match for Ivan Vanko. Here, Ivan Vanko's armor was even more powerful than in the movie. 3 arc reactors were used on the chest and shoulders at the same time. It seems that one was to provide power, and the other 2 were specifically used to provide energy for the energy whip in the armor's hand. After all, his nickname is Whiplock, and using whips is his specialty. When Qin Xiao came back, Tony's neck and feet were being tightly entangled by 2 whips. The violent energy on the whips flashed and crackled, directly blowing Tony's armor into pieces. In order to deal with you, I deliberately gave up the mobility of the armor. If you had just run away, I really didn't have any special way to deal with you. What a pity. You have to know that the energy output of the arc reactor is very exaggerated. Carrying 3 arc reactors at the same time is a big challenge to the output circuit of the armor. Just like a Gatling gun, the consequence of the exaggerated firing rate is that 6 different barrels rotate and shoot. Even after firing continuously for a few minutes, you need to stop shooting to dissipate the heat of the barrels. The design of the armor is even more troublesome. Adding 2 reactors directly makes the output circuit of the armor more than twice as complicated. Qin Xiao certainly doesn't understand these as well as Tony. He watched Tony being pulled towards Ivan Vanko little by little. Qin Xiao jumped up directly and stabbed Ivan Vanko's back and neck with his Tang Dao. Chapter 85, Tang Dao cuts electric wires. Ivan Vanko had his back to Qin Xiao, and his attention was focused on Tony in front of him. Qin Xiao succeeded with one move, and the Tang sword cut directly into the armor. Just like Iron Overlord, the strength of ordinary alloys could not stop the Tang sword produced by the system. Moreover, Ivan Vanko could now be called Whiplock. Moreover, the thickness of the armor shell of Whiplock was far less than that of Iron Overlord. Die! Qin Xiao thrust hard into it with a fierce force. Dang! A force of recoil came. The Tang sword hit a hard object and could no longer move forward. What? Special alloy? Before Qin Xiao could react, a crackling sound came from the back of the Whiplock armor. A metal whip on the back, with the energy that had just been filled, directly hit Qin Xiao's chest. Unprepared, Qin Xiao was whipped and flew out. Fortunately, when he was hit, Qin Xiao subconsciously held the Tang sword, otherwise the weapon would have remained on Whiplock. After being whipped and flying more than 10 meters away, and rolling on the ground for several meters, Qin Xiao stopped and saw the figure clearly. The spine-like exoskeleton on the back of Whiplock is movable, and it is directly lowered from the neck, like a whip like a tail. Qin Xiao was whipped by it just now. Unexpectedly, how could I forget that you are by Stark's side? In addition to this tail, I have to thank that idiot hammer. In order to surpass Stark, he couldn't wait to order some gold titanium alloy after I made the arc reactor, and wanted to build a battle armor like Stark for himself. This is a bargain for me. The lining of this battle armor is all made of gold titanium alloy. Your weapon can't cut into it. Haha. Whiplock's tail whipped the ground fiercely, and cracks appeared on the ground. It's beyond my imagination, but you think I can't do anything to you with just your turtle shell and tail? Your weapons can't hurt me at all. I can slowly chip off your shell layer by layer, Qin Xiao said confidently with his right hand. Even if you are made of gold titanium alloy all over your body, as long as your energy is exhausted, you are still not his opponent. Putting aside the strength, Qin Xiao, who inherited part of the Hulk's defense and recovery ability, was invincible from the beginning. You are indeed very powerful. There is no better way to face you except running away. But what about Stark? Can you save him before I kill him? Whiplock said as he added strength to his hands. Tony's armor plowed several deep trenches on the ground. Damn it, Qin Xiao couldn't afford to gamble, and he cursed and rushed towards Whiplock. But Whiplock's tail was extremely flexible. The folded tail was fully unfolded and turned into a whip more than 3 meters long, which directly danced around. Qin Xiao chopped at it with the tang dao in his hand for several times, but he didn't expect that the tail was also made of gold titanium alloy. Unless Qin Xiao aimed at one place and chopped it dozens of times, he couldn't break the defense at all. "Tony, you may need to hold on for a while." After a few more blows, Qin Xiao withdrew from the attack range of the Whiplock and said anxiously. His mind was turning quickly to see if there was any other way. "Try to attack his joints." With such thick armor and 3 arc reactors, he can't put all the circuits and sensors in the lining. He can carry it. Tony's voice was slightly distorted. It seemed that the whip had deformed his armor slightly. Hearing Tony's words, Qin Xiao's eyes lit up. He rushed to the right side of the Whiplock, and when the Whiplock's tail was whipping over, he kicked the ground hard with his right foot. He flashed to the left side of the Whiplock, but he didn't know that the Whiplock's tail reacted so quickly. It whistled in the air and turned to slap Qin Xiao from the side. "Son of a bitch!" Qin Xiao cursed angrily, and despite being hit hard on the back by a whip, he held the Whiplock's left leg tightly with his left hand. He thrust the tang sword in his right hand into the knee fiercely, and a strong force surged from his back. Qin Xiao hugged the left leg of the Whiplock armor with his left hand, and with the force of the whip, he turned the tang sword on the left leg of the Whiplock armor for half a circle. The tang sword in his hand also turned half a circle around the left leg. Sure enough, it was almost the same as Tony thought. As the tang sword turned, the circuit sensor system in the left leg was destroyed, and sparks flew. It's easy to deal with if it works. Qin Xiao aimed at the right leg again. The Whiplock was defeated by Qin Xiao in one move, and he became anxious. Even so, he still refused to let Tony Stark go. A whip was still tightly wrapped around Tony's neck, and a wheel axle on the arm slid quickly, tightening Tony's armor. The other whip turned into a whip shadow, and together with the tail, it whipped towards Qin Xiao. Qin Xiao smiled and kicked his legs towards the ground. He was upside down, and slid directly from his right leg to the right arm of the Whiplock. This move was learned from the Black Widow, but the Black Widow used this move to twist someone's neck with her thigh. With a way, everything is easy, especially since Qin Xiao was not afraid of the Whiplock's attack. If he could dodge, he would dodge. If he couldn't dodge, he would grit his teeth and take a beating, and use the kinetic energy of being hit to run all over the Whiplock. Various sparks kept coming out of the Whiplock. It made Qin Xiao feel like he was chopping electric wires with a kitchen knife. Awesome and electrified. After a dazzling operation, a large number of damaged lines and sensors finally caused a chain reaction. Even the places that Qin Xiao had not cut, countless sparks came out of the Whiplock. The 3 whips, including the tail, also went out one after another and fell limply to the ground. Qin Xiao then jumped down from Whiplock, and took a deep breath while standing there. He didn't know how many times he had been whipped. He didn't feel it just now, but now he just felt a little bit of burning pain. However, with his abnormal recovery ability, he soon felt numb and itchy, and then slowly returned to normal. Tony also stood up from the ground. The armor on his neck had been severely deformed. It was estimated that he would be almost deformed if he was strangled for a while. As expected, spending money is the kingly way. If the gold titanium alloy ordered by Justin Hammer is enough for Whiplock to build a full set of armor, then Qin Xiao would probably have to avenge Tony today. The armor you made is not a chariot, so you don't need so many reactors. That would only seriously damage the flexibility. But it seems that you have increased the speed and increased the power a lot. It's a great idea. Chapter 86. Battlefield Vegetative Rod. Tony came to Whiplock and said calmly. The entire armor was paralyzed, and the immobile Whiplock opened his mask. I don't need you to preach to me, Stark. Put away your hypocrisy. If your friend hadn't appeared, you would have gone to hell to apologize to my father today. In fact, it was me who reminded him how to deal with you. I saw the shortcomings of your armor. It was my knowledge that defeated you, just like my father defeated your father. You don't deserve to mention my father. Ivan Vanko spit on the ground viciously, expressing his disdain for Tony Stark. Qin Xiao turned his tang dao, and he was ready to go up and kill Whiplock with a knife, too lazy to watch their meaningless bickering. As a result, He was interrupted again by Rod's cry for help. I said, "Now everything is over, can you get me out first?" Poor Rod. The armor model on him is based on Mark II, and it can't be automatically detached at all. The energy source and the circuit in his chest were cut off by Qin Xiao. Now he couldn't move a hand and couldn't slowly remove the armor by himself. It's over. How are you going to deal with him? I think you should leave him to me. Black Widow and Pepper appeared again at the right time. Rod rolled his eyes while lying in the armor. Black Widow said this from the perspective of S.H.I.E.L.D. Qin Xiao and Tony certainly would not let S.H.I.E.L.D. obtain the technology of the arc reactor. Not to mention that Qin Xiao knew that the current S.H.I.E.L.D. should be called Snake Shield. Natasha, do you really think? Qin Xiao was halfway through his words when he was interrupted by Whiplock's laughter. Ha ha ha. No one can decide my fate. You will all go to hell with me. As Whiplock laughed, the reactors on all the armors on the ground around him, including the 3 on Whiplock, as long as they were not destroyed, they all flashed dangerous red light. Although I also described it that way, it is indeed a bit unnecessary to have a red light on before the explosion. Asshole. Damn it. Qin Xiao and Tony cursed almost at the same time, and the two rushed to the two women standing next to them. Tony held Pepper and flew into the sky, while Qin Xiao picked up Black Widow by the waist and jumped directly into the woods and the distance. The only sounds at the scene were the crazy curses of Whiplock and the alarm before the explosion. Of course, there was also a faint voice coming from a battle armor on the ground. What happened? Is it going to explode? Who can help me? Qin? Tony? Boom. Explosions sounded one after another, just like the ending of a melodramatic movie. The two male protagonists hugged their favorite girls respectively, standing in the distance and watching this explosion that meant victory. Boom. A set of battle armor that was blown away rolled not far in front of the four people. Rod's full-blooded groan came from inside. Tony hugged Pepper's waist and said to her affectionately, "It's such a pity to miss it last time. I think I should make up for it today." The two kissed slowly. Qin Xiao, who was standing by, was still holding Black Widow horizontally. Black Widow gently stretched out her hand and twisted Qin Xiao's waist, and asked, "What did you want to say to me just now, before the explosion?" Qin Xiao glanced at the beauty in his arms, and then at Tony and Pepper who were kissing passionately next to him. He grinned. "It doesn't matter now." He lowered his head and kissed Black Widow's lips. "Hey, why is there no sound? The explosion seems to be over. I'm almost killed by the fall. Let me out first." Qin, Tony, I know you are nearby. What are you doing? Hey, shut up. Qin Xiao kicked a stone at Rhodes' head, which made Rhodes' head buzz in the armor. After Rhodes became a war machine, the system defaulted to the identity of a superhero or an Avenger, and gave Qin Xiao a task reward of 500 points. Defeating Whiplock earned a reward of 1000 points. Qin Xiao once again had 2000 points in his hand. With 2000 points, Qin Xiao could only buy two things besides the Asgard god body that he had already exchanged. After thinking for a long time, Qin Xiao upgraded his Tang Dao. After all, if the Tang Dao was sharp enough this time, the Whiplock would be a living target. Qin Xiao originally thought that he would be given a new one if he bought it directly, but he didn't expect that the system would directly display an upgrade interface, put the E-level Tang Dao on it, and directly upgrade it to D-level. The appearance of the upgraded Tang Dao did not change much. Qin Xiao waved it in his hand for a few times and felt that the material was more resilient than before. But it was very uncomfortable that the folding function of the Tang Dao was cancelled, not knowing whether it was because of the material problem. This brought great inconvenience to Qin Xiao. He couldn't walk around with a knife on his back all the time. He was not Deadpool. In desperation, he spent 1000 points to choose a space prop. He did not choose to turn the space prop into a regular jewelry or something like that. After consulting the system, Qin Xiao turned it into a button on the waistband of his pants. Of course, because the combat uniform can be changed, buttons are not normal. If Qin Xiao turns the clothes into sportswear, it may be a small ornament or logo on the elastic band. It depends on Qin Xiao's intention. Anyway, in Qin Xiao's opinion, it is better to put such things in unexpected places, so that outsiders will not think that they have a space storage prop. It can only be considered as some magic effect, just like Doctor Strange and Loki. Besides, when fighting in the future, pulling out a Tang sword from the top of the crotch, It is more fierce than others. After exchanging 2 things, the points were left with 300 again. After putting some daily necessities in the space props, Qin Xiao boarded the plane to New Mexico. Originally, I wanted Thor to come to New York to follow me, but this guy said that he couldn't bear to part with his hammer, and it would be more comfortable to be next to the hammer, so Qin Xiao simply let him go. During this period of time, I don't know whether it was because of the loss of power or the influence of Jane, Thor, this silly big guy, not only seems to have really given up his obsession on the surface, but also has made a certain plan for his life. He rented a house in a small town and even found a job as a cook in a restaurant. The $100,000 Qin Xiao gave him last time, except for spending a little at the beginning and buying a few small gifts for Jane, he didn't touch it at all. During this period, he relied entirely on the money earned from working to support himself. This made Qin Xiao feel deeply surprised. Looking at the big guy who was busy in the open kitchen of the restaurant for a while, he did feel less impatient. Looking at Jane who was staring at Thor without blinking, Qin Xiao suddenly felt for Odin that his children grew up without their parents. But poor Odin, these children are a little too out of their parents' control. Chapter 87 Coulson's strong desire to survive. Thor, this big fool, in a short time on Earth, he learned from Jane what the correct values are. He goes to work to make money, spends time with his girlfriend after get off work, and reads books with Jane when he has time to learn knowledge on Earth. He is simply a good young man with 5 virtues and 4 beauties. In the movie, he was able to calm down and accept life on Earth because he was deceived by Loki. He felt that he had killed his father, and his mother ordered him not to set foot in Asgard again. He was ashamed. Now that Qin Xiao has told him the truth, he has really calmed down and is no longer impatient and impulsive. These are 2 completely different concepts. In contrast, living in Asgard for more than 1,500 years is simply living like a dog. Odin's family education is really, I guess he himself can't stand it, so he set up the so-called Odin sleep to turn a blind eye and let you guys toss slowly. He did hide in peace, but Loki took the position of acting king, and Thor's companions from childhood to adulthood couldn't sit still. Fandral, Volstagg, Hogun, these 3 guys who are known as the 3 warriors of Asgard, plus Thor's nominal fiancée, the goddess of land and harvest Sif. The 4 people came to the Rainbow Bridge Temple and found Heimdall. After telling a bunch of lies that he thought were brilliant, Heimdall left the sword of protection on the controller of the Rainbow Bridge and walked out. After letting a few people go to find Thor on Earth, Heimdall stood on the Rainbow Bridge and sighed. For him, this is not like playing house with a child. How can I say about the affairs of King Odin's family? It's terrible. I have to play with Loki later. It is said that it is difficult for a clean official to judge family affairs, let alone Odin, even the wisest person in the whole Asgard, Thor's mother, the queen of the gods Frigga. When facing the affairs of her own family, she chose to turn a deaf ear to the outside world and hid directly in the name of taking care of Odin. Let Loki sit in the position of king and do whatever he wants. Even when Loki colluded with the frost giants, Heimdall turned a blind eye. Fortunately, Loki wanted to lure the snake out of the hole and catch the frost giants in one fell swoop to prove to Odin that he was the best candidate for the next king. But then again, if Loki hadn't killed the leader of the frost giants directly with the Spear of Eternity, would the father of the gods, who was lying on the bed and claimed to be in Odin's sleep, really be killed easily? Qin Xiao in his previous life couldn't help shuddering every time he thought of this. The 2 children made the 9 kingdoms in chaos. And finally the 2 children opened their hearts to each other and cooperated wholeheartedly. In the face of the doomed Ragnarok, he directly used the entire Asgard to bury Hela, and obtained the escape of the Ragnarok curse for the 2 sons. So let's say, after the destruction of Asgard, before they met Thanos, Thor and Loki's every move was subconsciously influenced by Odin and Frigga. In the whole Asgard, except for these 2 old foxes and Heimdall who saw through everything but didn't say anything, everyone else was just like a big fool. Qin Xiao was thinking about this when a colorful light fell from the whirlwind like dark clouds in the sky far away from the town and landed on the ground outside the town. In the temporary station of S.H.I.E.L.D., all the reconnaissance equipment sounded crazy alarms. thanks to the research data and scientific instruments contributed by Jane and others. The space detector assembled detected the formation of a channel between the two spaces. What happened? Coulson rushed into the room with a constipated look on his face. That's the legendary Rainbow Bridge. A few big fools came from Asgard? Oh, no. A few gods. Let's go and take a look together. Qin Xiao didn't know when he appeared behind Coulson. Next to him was the biggest fool in Asgard, Thor. Qin Xiao knew that he would meet Loki controlling the destroyer in a while, so he didn't let Coulson take anyone with him. The two of them took Thor and the other three in a car and set off outside the town. It seems that your friend wants you to go back. What do you think, Thor? Qin Xiao asked Thor in the car. Actually, I may not be a candidate for the king. I look at things too simply. Maybe Loki is more suitable to be a king than me. Thor lowered his head and whispered, in fact, neither of you is suitable to be a king. One does not know how to be a king at all, and the other is just to sit on the throne. Qin Xiao defined the two brothers. Jane said so too. To be honest, I like the election on Earth. The king is elected by everyone, which is better than our family killing each other. Congratulations, Thor. You found a pretty good girlfriend. Qin Xiao did not want to comment on the social system, but Jane did give Thor many valuable and correct opinions during this period. Not long after the car drove out of the town, it met four ancient people dressed in medieval costumes. Stop, Coulson, that's my friend. Thor was still very happy to see the Asgardian trio and Sif. He jumped out and gave a big hug to several people before the car stopped. Are you sure these are gods from Asgard? They look more like the warrior Princess Xena, Robin Hood, and Jackie Chan. That fat guy looks like the Beryl in League of Legends, except he's holding an axe. Don't ask me if there is League of Legends in Marvel. Jackie Chan has it, so of course there can be League of Legends as well. Coulson pointed at the people outside the car with a weird look on his face. Although I strongly disagree with you using Jackie Chan to compare with that idiot outside, it is undeniable that if anyone tells me that gods look like this, I will slap him hard. By the way, when are you going to get your hair done? I know a very good depilatory. Qin Xiao was talking and suddenly remembered the bet between him and Coulson. I'm sorry, Qin. I shouldn't compare the Chinese celebrity to that idiot outside. I just slipped my tongue. What I meant was that the idiot outside looked like a wretched Japanese ninja. Yes, a so-called Japanese Ronin samurai or something like that. Anyway, he definitely couldn't be Chinese. Coulson had a strong desire to survive. In his life, the most important thing was his antique sports car that he regarded as his girlfriend, and then his hair. The Captain America card ranked third. Qin Xiao sneered and looked at Coulson's hairline without saying anything. Okay, Coulson sighed. I have 2 tickets for the cello performance. I spent a lot of money to get them from scalpers. It's on the 15th of next month. Agent Romanov doesn't have a mission that day. She is very interested in these things. Deal. Qin Xiao stretched out his right hand. Let's go. Get out of the car and listen to what these idiots can talk about. Chapter 88. God, who gave you the courage? The great father of the gods has fallen into a deep sleep, and the evil Loki has taken over the position of king. The people of Asgard are in dire straits, and they must go back to defeat the evil Loki and give Asgard a bright future, etc. This is what Qin Xiao and Coulson heard the 4 people from Asgard say after they got off the car. The cliché of justice fighting against it. Qin Xiao yawned when he heard it. You actually listen so seriously, Coulson? Qin Xiao couldn't help but say to Coulson, who was listening with relish. What a good story. The evil brother who seized the position of king is waiting for the prince brother to go back and defeat him. You didn't hear this kind of fairy tale when you were a child. My mother often told me this kind of story. I still remember the first children's picture book I read, the story of Simba, the Lion King, which is similar to this, but it's about the king's younger brother and son. Qin Xiao couldn't help rolling his eyes, thinking that you listened to it as a fairy tale for a long time. Everyone, I understand what you mean, but my father said that I can't go back before I learn how to be a real king, and if Asgard really becomes that bad, my mother will come forward. Now it seems that it may not be that bad, right? Thor said the most intelligent words in more than 1,500 years. That's right, if it's really as they said. They really think that Frigga behind them is just a decoration. Apart from anything else, She can directly order Heimdall to pick up Thor from the earth, so why would the four of them sneak down? The Queen of Gods is busy taking care of Odin, who has fallen into a deep sleep. You must go back immediately, otherwise the 9 kingdoms will usher in war and disaster. We must save everything. Volstagg, the most hot-tempered of the 3 warriors of Asgard, said with a face full of justice and white foam flying from the corners of his mouth. When he was excited, he picked up his axe and chopped it into the void a few times. Puff. Qin Xiao couldn't help laughing out loud. Swish. Several pairs of eyes looked at Qin Xiao and Coulson. Coulson took a step back silently. Several eyes were fixed on Qin Xiao. Sorry, everyone. I didn't mean to interrupt your chat, but what you said just now, defeat the evil Loki and save everything in the 9 kingdoms. We represent justice. Qin Xiao pinched his throat and stood on tiptoe, speaking shrilly, imitating their impassioned manner. Yes, that's what you said. It's so funny, as if without you, the 9 kingdoms will perish in the next moment. Although these Asgardians didn't know what was so funny about Qin Xiao's words, they could still distinguish the contemptuous expression and mocking eyes on Qin Xiao's face. Volstagg took a big step to Qin Xiao's front, and his nearly 2-meter-tall burly figure looked down at Qin Xiao. The long beard braided into a braid on his chin trembled as he spoke. Are you laughing at us, mortals? If you laugh at us Asgardian gods, do you believe I will use my axe? Hey, Volstagg, stop it. This is my friend, my teacher. He taught me a lot on Earth. Thor rushed between the two. He knew very well what his companions thought of Earth, the land of mortals, the barren land, and the unique superiority of Asgardians. This was how he was when he first came. Then you'd better teach him to shut up, stupid mortal. If you dare to laugh at our Asgardian gods again, I will use my axe to teach you a lesson. Volstagg looked at Thor, who was stopping him, looked at Qin Xiao with contempt, and threatened Qin Xiao with a muffled voice while holding the axe. As soon as he finished speaking, Thor knew that something bad was going to happen. He had been with Qin Xiao for a while, and he had never seen Qin Xiao suffer a loss in his words. Sure enough, just as Volstagg was about to turn around, Qin Xiao spoke. Ha, 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 I seem to have laughed at him again. Coulson, I laughed at a god. What should I do? Should I kowtow and apologize? Thor, what kind of god is your friend? The god of boars, or the god of gluttony? What did you say? Volstagg took a step forward angrily, but was held tightly by the god of thunder. He kept blinking at Qin Xiao, signaling Qin Xiao to stop talking. Qin Xiao didn't even look at the god of thunder, but pointed at Volstagg's nose and said, You guys are talking about saving the 9 kingdoms. Which kingdom needs you to save? Who can you beat? The frost giant Laufey, or the fire lord Searcher, or the sleeping dark elves? No, 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 you can't beat anyone. Qin Xiao stretched out a finger and shook it gently, looking at Volstagg up and down with disdain. You can only bully some malnourished children. I really don't know where you get the confidence to talk about saving the 9 kingdoms. Is it your sloppy beard or your fat ass that gives you the courage? Ah, I'll kill you. The angry Volstagg pushed away the thunder god in front of him, holding the axe and rushing towards Qin Xiao like a wild boar. Look, I said he was the god of wild boars. What do you think? Coulson, Coulson. Qin Xiao called Coulson, but found no response. Looking back, this guy ran back to the car and was far away from him. Damn it, Coulson, you've learned bad things. Qin Xiao complained to Coulson, turned around and dodged Volstagg's axe. While Volstagg's axe was hitting the ground with all his strength, he stepped on the back of Volstagg's axe with one foot, grabbed Volstagg's big beard with his right hand and pulled it hard. He jumped up with the force, and his right knee hit Volstagg's chin with the thunderous force. Bang! A dull collision sound was heard, and Volstagg flew in response. The huge figure flew backwards for 20 to 30 meters before it hit the ground heavily, stirring up a large pile of sand and dust. Poor boar god, I haven't even used any strength yet, but you flew out. Hey, how's your sexy ass? Qin Xiao stretched out his right hand and made a canopy on his forehead, and shouted loudly towards the distance. Clang, clang, clang. When Sif and the other 2 Asgard warriors saw their companions being beaten, they all drew their weapons and glared at Qin Xiao. Hey, great gods, are you ready to besiege a mortal like me together? Qin Xiao stretched out the index finger of his left hand and lightly hooked it at the 3 people in an extremely obscene manner. Come on, come together, and make it clear first that if you lose, you are not allowed to cry and go home to your mother. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89 Qin Xiao takes action, shocking the gods. You are quite strong, and you can be considered a real warrior in Asgard, but do you think you have the strength to challenge the gods? Facing Qin Xiao's provocation, Fandral, one of the 3 warriors of Asgard, gently waved his sword a few times and stood up to say, in his opinion, Volstagg was just careless just now. The axe with all his strength was dodged by someone, so it would be strange if he didn't get hit. It takes several tons of explosive power to knock someone away for dozens of meters. Several tons of explosive power is very powerful in the eyes of mortals, but in the eyes of Asgard's warriors, it is just basic operation. Since you are Thor's friend, apologize to Volstagg, and we will not pursue the charge of blasphemy against the gods. Haha. Qin Xiao was happy. He didn't know whether the people in Asgard were sitting in a well and looking at the sky, or whether Odin protected them too well. This kind of innate sense of superiority is really extremely annoying. With a sneer and curling his lips, Qin Xiao was ready to educate these so-called gods of Asgard. Unfortunately, Loki, who was anxious to stop Thor from returning to Asgard, did not give him such an opportunity. The sky was covered with dark clouds again, slowly rolling into a whirlwind, and then a colorful light fell. After smashing a circular shape full of various unknown symbols on the ground, a black metal giant appeared in the original place. This is the destroyer guarding the treasury, who released it. The arrival of the destroyer made several Asgardians change their faces. There is a small town behind, and there are at least thousands of people in it. Stop it. Thor took a look at the town behind at the first time. You know, Jane is still in that town. At this moment, they couldn't care about the conflict with Qin Xiao. Hearing Thor's words, several people rushed towards the destroyer with weapons. The tacit understanding of several people can be seen in a battle. Volstagg, who was just beaten away by Qin Xiao, ran over from a distance and stood in front of several people. The destroyer's body was ablaze, and the metal bars on the flat face opened, and a concentrated flame impact blasted towards the 4 people who were running over. The 4 men dodged to the sides. Volstagg rolled over, and chopped the destroyer's ankle with an axe. Fandral and Hogan used a sword and a small hammer respectively. They blocked the destroyer's arms from hitting Volstagg. With his arms blocked, the destroyer's body flashed with fire again. The metal strips on his face opened again, and the rolling flames slowly gathered together again. Sif! Volstagg shouted. Sif, who had already quietly circled behind the destroyer, jumped up more than 3 meters high, and the short stick in her hand turned into a double-headed spear, steadily passing through the metal gap that the destroyer had enlarged due to bending over. The spear pinned the destroyer directly to the ground. The flames in the destroyer's body slowly extinguished. Fandral gracefully made a sword flower and looked at Qin Xiao provocatively. Qin Xiao rolled his eyes and pointed at the destroyer. Fandral looked back quickly and saw the metal strips on the destroyer's body began to rotate slowly. Driven by the metal strips, the whole body turned over, and the whole person went from bending over to leaning back. The flames in the body burst out again. Sif! This time, Thor shouted loudly, and Sif jumped off the destroyer in time. The destroyer turned over, and flames burst out again, and the body thrust forward. As it stood up again, the spear nailed to the ground slowly retreated from its body bit by bit. With a turn, a flame shot out from the face. Unlike before, this time it did not stop after bombarding, but kept firing, chasing the 4 people with the rotation of the body and head. Fortunately, this huge destroyer was not very flexible, otherwise just this one blow would be enough to make the 4 proud gods fall directly. It was impossible for the 4 people to keep being beaten and chase the other 3 people while the flames were burning. Volstagg, who had the greatest strength, jumped high and aimed at the chest of the destroyer with an axe. Unfortunately, the destroyer's battle awareness was much better than before. Before Volstagg's axe was fully swung, the destroyer's huge arm swept over like a pillar. Volstagg's proud strength was nothing in front of the destroyer, and he flew dozens of meters away again. The destroyer's body was made of metal and other precious metals collected by Odin. Qin Xiao's current physical strength was definitely not comparable. In just a moment, Volstagg fell to the ground and spit out a mouthful of blood. He was seriously injured. The remaining 3 people were not much better. They avoided the fire attack but could not avoid the arms and feet that followed. One by one, they were swept away and suffered more or less injuries. The destroyer still refused to give up. He aimed at Sif, who was closest to him, and took a big step and walked towards Sif. Sif was kicked away by the destroyer just now. Although she blocked the attack with her shield, her physical strength was not as strong as the others. Her mobility was greatly reduced after the attack, and she obviously could not dodge it. The other people were in a similar situation. Even if they could barely get up, they could not rush to rescue quickly. "Qin," Thor shouted, looking at Qin Xiao with a pleading face. Qin Xiao sighed, stomped his feet on the ground, and rushed towards the destroyer. To be honest, Sif had given up hope at this moment. The destroyer had raised his fist high. Sif looked at the fist getting closer and closer to her, and closed her eyes in despair. Bang! A dull sound rang out. Sif felt that her eyes went dark, and she opened her eyes in confusion. "It's you!" Sif shouted in surprise. The scene in front of her made Sif a little unbelievable. The Earthling was facing away from her at this moment, with his hands crossed and raised, steadily blocking the destroyer's punch. Not only Sif, but also the 3 warriors of Asgard lying on the ground all widened their eyes. How could it be possible that this Earthling, a mortal, blocked the destroyer's fist with his hands? "What are you staring at? Hey, who are you talking to? Can you get up and leave quickly?" The strength of the destroyer should not be underestimated. Qin Xiao felt the pressure on his hands getting bigger and bigger, and shouted at Sif without mercy. Oh, Sif nodded, and after reacting, she struggled to get up and quickly avoided the battle area between the destroyer and Qin Xiao. Chapter 90 The Indestructible Turtle Shell. Seeing that Sif had left the battle area, Qin Xiao pulled his hand and released the force to the side. The destroyer's huge arm slid to the side and slammed to the ground. Taking advantage of its unstable center of gravity and staggering, Qin Xiao fell to the ground and aimed at the destroyer's ankle and made a downward shovel. Bang! The destroyer's huge figure was unstable and fell to the ground. How could Qin Xiao miss this great opportunity? Before this guy turned around, he quickly raised his fist and punched the back of the destroyer's head. Bang! The punch went down. The metal roared. The destroyer was fine, but Qin Xiao's finger bones were hurt. Knowing that he couldn't hit this turtle shell with his bare hands, Qin Xiao wiped his right hand on his waistband. A tank sword slowly pulled out from the void. Of course, to outsiders, this scene looked like Qin Xiao slowly pulled out a long sword from his crotch. Fandral looked at the long sword in his hand with horror, and then looked at his crotch. Asgard has many magics that can transform into its own weapons, but Qin Xiao just didn't have any magic fluctuations on his body. Fandral didn't understand where Qin Xiao got such a knife from. Qin Xiao didn't know what Fandral was thinking. Adhering to the idea of killing it while it's sick, he pulled out the tank sword and stabbed it at the destroyer on the ground. With one slash, the blade went straight into the gap of the metal strip on the destroyer. However, such physical damage had no effect on the empty body of the destroyer. Qin Xiao gritted his teeth and slashed at the metal strip on its body. The blade slashed along the metal strip, and with the harsh sound of metal friction, sparks jumped out of the blade. After a difficult slash, Qin Xiao found that there was no mark left on the place where the tank sword had slashed. He looked at the tank sword that he had upgraded not long ago with heartache. Even though the blade was not damaged by the previous blow, Qin Xiao was reluctant to use it again, and put away the tang sword in his hand. Aiming at the destroyer who was about to twist his neck and turn his head again, Qin Xiao aimed at its half-turned face and punched it back. The fire that had just appeared in the destroyer's head went out as it turned its face again and landed on the ground. Crack, crack. I don't know if it was the destroyer's own fighting instinct or Loki's command. The destroyer on the ground wanted to turn his head again and send a flame energy beam to Qin Xiao. Although Qin Xiao's punch hurt his bones, he had no better way to deal with this turtle shell now. Seeing that it dared to turn its head, he punched it again. Go back. Crack, bang, crack, bang. The two seemed to be competing with each other, one trying desperately to turn his head, and the other refused to let you turn. The three warriors of Asgard and Sif next to them were really dumbfounded. Is this really the destroyer who guards the treasury? The one that Odin gave magical power to? While Qin Xiao was fighting the destroyer, they had already stood up and supported each other to come to Thor's side. At this moment, Fandral looked at Qin Xiao and punched the destroyer to the ground, and asked with a look of seeing a ghost on his face. Looking at the other people, they all widened their eyes. Is it the destroyer? Didn't we just try it? Thor, is this really Midgard, the world that needs our protection? Hogun looked at Qin Xiao with a dull face, and asked Thor who was beside him. The earth is not as weak as we thought, there are even some as powerful as my father here. Thor remembered the old friend of his father, the supreme sorcerer, whom Qin Xiao had told him about. As powerful as Odin? Okay. I take back my contempt for them. Hogun swallowed hard and said. Compared with their recognition of Qin Xiao's strength, Qin Xiao was now complaining in his heart. This guy is just a tortoiseshell. No matter how you hit him, it's useless. If you keep hitting him like that, he will be fine. He will lose his fists. No matter how abnormal his recovery ability is, he can't stand being hit all the time. By the way, why can't Thor sense his hammer? He has learned to be very humble and sensible. Okay? Qin Xiao was complaining in his heart. The destroyer on the ground seemed to be unable to bear being beaten like this. He no longer turned his head forcibly, but faced the ground directly. A burst of flames burst out. The direct impact made his upper body rise high to the back. Qin Xiao was punching mechanically, and his head was still in a daze. Who knew the destroyer's head suddenly raised high as if it was equipped with a thruster. Qin Xiao was caught off guard and was thrown far away. Qin Xiao spit out a mouthful of sand. He was about to go up and fight for a while with his advantage of flexibility. Who knew the destroyer turned around and ignored Qin Xiao, and walked straight towards Thor and the others. You're ignoring me now. Qin Xiao rubbed his wrist that was aching from the shock. Thor, do you have a divine weapon like Thor's hammer, such as the Spear of Eternity, or I can't break this turtle shell? Thor's face was as bitter as a gourd. Spear of Eternity, what a joke. That's Odin's weapon. If you don't have it, I can't do anything. You'd better get your power back quickly, and it's best if you can pick up that hammer, otherwise you'll be in big trouble today. Qin Xiao jumped a few times and returned to the crowd before the destroyer and said, if he could sense it, he would have picked up the hammer long ago. Why bother? Thor looked at the people around him, gritted his teeth, and ran directly to the front of the destroyer regardless of Sif's obstruction. Loki, I know you can hear me. I'm your target, right? Let them go. Brother, I know I was arrogant in the past. If I did anything that made you feel sad, I'm sorry, but they are innocent. Thor's face was full of sincerity. This was definitely not just a casual remark. He must have reflected on what he did in the past during this period. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told them that he would not go back now. Thor! A nervous shout came from behind. It turned out to be Jane. She saw the huge destroyer outside in the town and drove out worriedly. I'm fine. Thor raised his palm to the back, signaling Jane not to run back. Just as he was about to turn around and say something to Loki, the destroyer turned around and swung his arm, directly smashing Thor and sending him flying. Thor! Several people in the back screamed at the same time. According to the plot, Thor should have been able to feel Thor's hammer after saying these words and being hit again. But this time, it was obviously not the case. Thor, who was hit and flew away, staggered to his feet. The destroyer's body flashed with fire, and he strode towards Thor again. Jane and several people from Asgard rushed towards Thor nervously. Qin Xiao also wanted to stop him, but a golden portal suddenly appeared, and a thin arm stretched out, blocking Qin Xiao directly. Chapter 91. Do you believe Odin's lies to children? Ancient One? Qin Xiao knew who the person was without seeing the whole picture. The thin figure of the Ancient One stepped out of the portal. Qin, this is 177A Bleecker Street? Coulson appeared from nowhere again and asked Qin Xiao. Yes, that's right, the supreme sorcerer of the Ancient One. Compared to you, he is the real guardian of the earth. Qin Xiao introduced him to Coulson. The Ancient One glanced at Coulson and nodded with a smile as a greeting. Coulson swallowed hard, thinking about how to deal with this supreme sorcerer in the future. The Ancient One was polite to Coulson and reached out to pat Qin Xiao's shoulder gently. You don't have to do anything. Let them solve the Asgard issue themselves. Odin has already arranged it. Qin Xiao was not surprised that Odin had arranged it. It was just that according to Odin, Thor's current performance was much better than in the original plot. Logically, he should be able to get his power back. Qin Xiao told the Ancient One his thoughts in a vague way. If it's just for training, Thor is much better now than before. Why can't he get his own power back? According to what Thor said about Odin, Thor should be qualified to get the power of Thor now. Bullshit qualifications. Ancient One laughed disdainfully. You believe what Odin said to deceive children? What qualifications? Odin is right to train Thor, but the key to getting the hammer and power back is not a transformation of character, but whether Thor's life is in danger. What? Qin Xiao did not expect this. What do you think? Even when Thor just fell to the earth, you just rushed up and beat him to death. Do you think the hammer would come over automatically? Damn, old fox. Qin Xiao lowered his head and muttered. Ancient One gave Qin Xiao a squinting look. Do you think that Odin conquered the universe with only his own fighting power? Do you really think that the ancient beings in the universe are as stupid as these rookies in front of you? But since you're here, as an elder, you have to pretend. Follow me. Ancient One called Qin Xiao, stretched out his hand and drew a line in the air, took a step, and came to Thor and others. Just at this moment, the destroyer had come over, with flames on his head, and a beam of flame shot towards everyone. Ancient One stretched out a hand and quickly drew several circles in the air. A series of golden lights shot out, forming a huge magic shield with a diameter of about 2 meters in the air. Then Ancient One's white and tender little hand gently pushed the magic shield that was densely covered with spells. The magic shield immediately shot towards the destroyer. The powerful flame beam shot on the magic shield, like a baby hitting the fast-running Hulk, and the magic shield did not slow down even a little. Instead, it went upstream against the flame beam and hit the huge body of the destroyer. Then it took the destroyer and retreated hundreds of meters before slowly dissipating in the air. Hiss. Everyone present, except Qin Xiao, took a breath of cold air. Fandral said to Hogan, who was also stunned beside him, "Who is this again? Why do I feel that we need the protection of the earth?" Only Qin Xiao lowered his head and muttered, "He is thousands of years old. I don't know how he maintains his hands. He looks like a little girl." Bang! Ancient One stretched out his hand to Qin Xiao's head, then walked to the front of Thor with his hands behind his back. "Odin and I have known each other for thousands of years. I know that you were exiled to Earth. If you want to get back your power of Thor, you must know what you are fighting for. The people here today are all people who need you to protect. We will not help you with that destroyer anymore. Think about how to protect the people around you." After saying that, regardless of their reactions, he pulled Qin Xiao back to the original place. That's not all. She also set a portal for the destroyer again, allowing it to come to a place less than 100 meters away from Thor and the others. "You're being a bit unkind, aren't you? Why don't you just watch the fun? Go over and make a move, say a few sarcastic words, and then pull the monster back. That's just idleness." Qin Xiao pouted and groaned. Guyi's white and tender little hand stretched out again, and hit Qin Xiao's head again. I don't know where he got so much strength, but with Qin Xiao's physical fitness, he actually jumped up in pain. He covered his head and yelled, "Just talk if you want to. Why do you always hit me? You deserve a beating." Guyi got a palace fan from somewhere, fanned himself a few times and said, "I took action to let Odin know that I didn't leave his son alone when he came to Earth. Otherwise, you have been a nanny for his son for so long. As the next supreme sorcerer, I have to bring you to his house to ask for more benefits." Qin Xiao covered his head with a look of grievance. "I am not interested in being a supreme sorcerer. Not only do I have to guard the temple, but I have to be tortured by Dormammu thousands of times. I am sick." These words came out of his mouth. Qin Xiao always felt that there was some conspiracy about the matter. That Ancient One said that he would inherit the Time Stone. So when Ancient One brought it up again, Qin Xiao complained about it. After he finished speaking, he realized that something was wrong. Looking at Ancient One again, he stared at him with a smile on his face and didn't say anything. An expression that said, "You really know everything." Ahem. "Look over there. Thor is beaten again. Look." Qin Xiao changed the subject dryly. Ancient One didn't ask any more questions and looked towards Thor and the others. Sure enough, After being told by Ancient One, Thor ran directly to the destroyer, ignoring the obstruction of his companions. This time, he didn't say anything nonsense, but opened his arms. "Loki, if you must kill me, then do it now. Let this end. Don't implicate them." Loki was probably frightened by Ancient One's move just now, and he manipulated the destroyer to subconsciously look at Ancient One and Qin Xiao. Seeing that the two of them had no intention of taking action, he hardened his heart. A huge beam of fire sprayed towards Thor. "No, Thor!" Several large and small exclamations sounded, and the flame beam hit Thor's body without mercy. It pushed him away for dozens of meters before dissipating. Looking at Thor again, his whole body was burned like charcoal, and his clothes were tattered. His face was so black that it was basically impossible to tell who he was. There was still a wisp of white smoke coming out of his body. In this state, it is estimated that even if a god came, it would be difficult to save him. Chapter 92. Who are you, Dad? Thor. Sif just screamed in pain, and then she saw the mortal girl next to her rush down like an arrow. There were still crystal tears hanging in the corners of her eyes. "Thor, Thor, no, don't sleep. You said you would take me to Asgard to see the endless sea, Thor." The sadness in her tone made Sif, who had been with Thor for more than 1,000 years, feel ashamed. She could only stop in disappointment. Loki was still quite pure when he was a bad guy, although he made Thor half dead. But how could Loki be at ease like this? He controlled the destroyer again and walked towards the place where Thor fell. The huge metal feet stepped on the sand step by step, making a strange rustling sound. It was like the countdown of the god of death. Jane heard the footsteps of the destroyer and looked up at the destroyer with hatred. Then she stood up suddenly and opened her arms to block between Thor and the destroyer. She put on a posture that if she wanted to touch him, she would step over my body. In Qin Xiao's opinion, this is even more touching than the "you jump, I jump" in Titanic. Alas, foolish people have good fortune. Qin Xiao sighed and said, "I envy you. Don't worry, you have more good fortune than him." Guyi turned around and said with a smile, "Hey, are you scolding me or praising me?" Qin Xiao touched the back of his head and said. Guyi just smiled faintly and ignored Qin Xiao. Looking at Thor, Jane stood in front of Thor without hesitation. Sif and others looked at each other, and ran in front of Thor, and opened their arms like Jane. A bunch of stupid idiots. Loki, who was remotely controlling from Asgard, looked at the picture sent back by the destroyer and said disdainfully. Out of cautious habit, Loki asked the destroyer to turn around and look at Guyi and Qin Xiao again. Seeing that they still looked like they had nothing to do with it, only then did he control the destroyer to gather the flames in his body. He wanted to kill all the 5 people in front of him and Thor behind him at once. The rolling flames gathered in the destroyer's body. Jane turned around and looked at Thor, who was still lying on the ground, and closed his eyes facing the destroyer. At this moment, Thor's fingers on the ground twitched slightly. Just this small moment caused the wind and clouds of the world to move. The sky was suddenly covered with dark clouds, and lightning flashed out of thin air, each of which seemed to tear the entire sky apart. Looking at Thor's right hand again, a small whirlwind appeared out of thin air in his right hand, as if summoning something. In the temporary camp of Shield, Thor's hammer, which had not moved since it landed, trembled violently. Countless small lightning bolts appeared around the hammer, and the next moment, the hammer flew into the sky. It rose high into the air, attracted a huge lightning energy, and then broke through the air in the direction of Thor. They were more than 10 kilometers outside the town, not far from Thor's hammer. Almost instantly, Thor's hammer appeared in Thor's hand with a whistling sound. Thor's eyes haven't been opened yet, and his right hand has grasped the hammer handle fiercely. The lightning in the sky seems to have found its direction and drilled into the hammer on the ground. After the transformation of the hammer, Thor's power poured into Thor's almost roasted body. What is full-blood resurrection on the spot? Qin Xiao finally saw it. He saw Thor's big fool suddenly opened his eyes like a corpse. Then the whole person floated in the air. The hammer in his hand pointed to the sky, and countless lightning struck the hammer madly. Then he succeeded in transcending the tribulation and became a god on the spot. A set of fish scale inner armor appeared out of thin air, covering the body to the limbs, and then a simple chest armor covered the trunk of the body. and finally a red cloak slowly formed from the shoulders and floated down. Majestic, the real Thor has come to Earth. Oh, damn it. Jane covered her mouth with both hands and shouted in disbelief, looking at the transformed Thor with stars in her eyes. Fuck. Qin Xiao spat indignantly. He had never succeeded in pretending to be cool. Look at this big fool. Not only did all the injuries on his body heal automatically, but even the black ash on his face disappeared. The few strands of hair that were burned just now grew out again, and they were combed neatly, as if they were gelled to have a styling effect. Just tell me if it's infuriating. Thor, who had transformed, hit the destroyer who was about to spit fire with a flying hammer. Once again, bang, he fell directly to the ground. Then he waved Thor's hammer and flew into the sky, swinging the hammer in the air and spinning it non-stop. A huge tornado formed in the air, and while rolling up the yellow sand all over the sky, it actually drove the huge body of the destroyer slowly rising towards the sky. This is fucking unscientific. This is a hammer, not a fan. This is not in line with aerodynamics. Qin Xiao was still mumbling in dissatisfaction. As the destroyer rose to a certain height, Thor turned around in the whirlwind, upside down, and smashed down at the destroyer with his hammer. At this time, Loki could not sit still and wait for death. He activated the flames in the destroyer's body and raised his head to spray a beam of flame upwards. Unfortunately, this beam of flame hit a divine weapon like Thor's hammer, and Thor couldn't even stop it. The hammer forced the flame beam to rush towards the destroyer. Boom! A violent explosion sounded in the air, and along with the sound, the yellow sand in the sky expanded in all directions in a circle with the shock wave. It was like a huge smoke ring, slowly expanding until it disappeared. Qin Xiao, who witnessed the live version for the first time, spoke again. Impossible. Is he that powerful? Guyi once again explained to Qin Xiao how important it is to have a good father. That is a force sealed in by Odin. Theoretically, even if a pig picks up a hammer now, it can knock over the big metal shell in one go. Otherwise, with Thor's current strength, even with Thor's hammer, he can't smash the magic puppet made of raw metal. Okay, reincarnation is more important than hard work, Qin Xiao said with his hands spread out. Suddenly, for the first time, it seemed that being regarded as the next supreme sorcerer by Ancient One was not a bad thing. Of course, the premise is to know what this 1,000-year-old fox is planning. Host, don't worry. No one in this world can compete with you because you have a system father. A lifeless voice sounded in his mind. Qin Xiao slapped his forehead fiercely. Yes, I have a system. Who am I afraid of? Is there something wrong? System, why the hell did you suddenly come out? Also, whose father are you? Come out and tell me clearly. System. Chapter 93. The show begins. The plot of Thor's Earth has been completed, and the destroyer has been destroyed. Considering that the host also participated in the battle, 1,000 points will be awarded. If the host shouts or insults the system again, the reward will be cancelled. System, you are awesome. Qin Xiao swallowed the curse words that were about to come out. There was no way, in front of the points, whatever the system said was right. In consideration of the host's sincere repentance, a kind reminder that the part about Thor's exile to Earth has been completed. The host's reward, Odin's friendship. The host needs to go to Asgard to claim it. Okay, Qin Xiao replied silently, but in fact, he thought that you didn't need to say it. The Ancient One had come out in person. He looked up at Thor again. After knocking down the destroyer in a few moves, he first had a passionate kiss with Jane. He completely ignored the fact that his fiancée was right next to him. This damn scumbag. Qin, thank you for your help during this period, and thank you for the Supreme Sorcerer of the Ancient One. I once heard the story of the Supreme Sorcerer of the Ancient One when I was a child, but I thought it was just a legend. Thank you for your teaching. Thor bowed slightly to the Ancient One and Qin Xiao. Apart from anything else, at least during this time on Earth, he did learn to be humble. On behalf of Asgard, I will form an alliance with the Earth in the future to fight against the dangers in the universe and protect the safety of the 9 realms. Most of these words were said to Qin Xiao. He was not qualified to form an alliance with the Supreme Sorcerer for the time being. Qin Xiao nodded slightly, and the two of them understood each other tacitly. Now I have to go back to Asgard. There are some things I have to go back to deal with. Jane, I promise you that I will come back to find you." After talking to Qin Xiao and the Ancient One, Thor said to Jane affectionately again. As soon as he finished speaking, the two kissed again. Qin Xiao secretly glanced at Sif next to him, and she looked embarrassed. Fandral was good at perceiving people's hearts. He glanced at Sif's face and said to Thor, "Thor, we must go back immediately and send the destroyer to Earth. This is not a normal situation. There must be something wrong with Heimdall." This sentence reminded Thor, although half of this was to help Sif out, the other half was indeed the truth. He repeatedly promised Jane that he would come back after dealing with the matter. Thor led the people of Asgard to the place where Sif and others landed. Standing on the mark made by the Rainbow Bridge, Thor raised his hammer and shouted to the sky, "Heimdall, take us back, Heimdall." He raised the hammer again. After shouting twice, the Rainbow Bridge did not respond at all. "Hey, Thor, are you holding the hammer so that Heimdall can better receive your signal?" Qin Xiao couldn't help asking. Heimdall is the gatekeeper of Asgard, a very powerful god. His eyes can see any corner of the universe, and his ears can hear anyone calling him anywhere, Thor explained to Qin Xiao with a serious face. "Oh," Qin Xiao nodded, "it's really amazing. Since he can hear you, you have to shout to raise the hammer." "Raise the hammer." "Ah, sorry, I'm used to it." Thor scratched the back of his head a little embarrassed. He looked up at the sky again, and just when he was about to raise the hammer, he remembered Qin Xiao's words and put it down halfway. "Heimdall." I don't know if Qin Xiao's words worked. Dark clouds began to sweep across the sky, and a rainbow light fell along the mark on the ground. Thor nodded to everyone, then looked at Jane deeply, and took a few people to the Rainbow Bridge. Jane stared blankly at the figures of several people slowly pulling and disappearing in the Rainbow Bridge, muttered to himself, using energy to break through the barrier of two spaces and the long distance, and directly transmit people or objects to the other side. This is the real power of God. Qin Xiao gently patted Jane's shoulder. "Hey, girl, I know you are now obsessed with the tall and mighty Thor, and think he is the best. Asgard is a sacred place, but I still want to tell you that the so-called power of God can pull people in the space channel. If there is any accident in the channel, they will be sucked into the space vortex. This is what a real god should be like." Bor. Qin Xiao stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. Guyi looked at Qin Xiao helplessly, stretched out his hand, and a golden portal opened instantly. Jane looked inside and saw that it was the Rainbow Bridge that Thor had described to her. On the Rainbow Bridge, Thor was holding a hammer and flying quickly towards a majestic golden palace in the distance. "See, this is the power of God." "Bye." Qin Xiao waved to Jane, and he and Guyi stepped into the portal and disappeared. Jane finally reacted from the shock. "Hey, damn it, I want to go too." What responded to her was the last golden spark of the portal closing in the void. "Next time I see Daisy, I will definitely not let her talk to you again," he complained indignantly, then turned and walked towards his car. Eric Shavik joined SHIELD to do a new research project, and Daisy returned to school to continue her laboratory work. Jane should also find a place to settle down and wait for her Asgard prince to come to her. The place where the Ancient One opened the portal was on the shore of the Endless Sea, diagonally opposite the Rainbow Bridge. Standing here, you can see the Rainbow Bridge and the Rainbow Bridge Temple on the right, and the Golden Palace in the distance on the left. The destroyer failed to kill Thor, and Loki immediately froze Heimdall with the icebox, opened Asgard and led the frost giants to the Golden Palace. Thor failed to call Heimdall just now because Heimdall had not yet broken free from the freezing. Loki tricked Laufey, the leader of the frost giants, into the Golden Palace in the name of cooperating to kill Odin. While Laufey was about to kill Odin, he killed Laufey with a sneak attack with the Spear of Eternity. The first was to prove his ability in front of Odin, and the second was that after Odin told him about his life experience, he felt ashamed that he was a descendant of the frost giants. He was the future king of Asgard. How could he be a descendant of the frost giants? For this reason, he did not hesitate to kill Laufey, and was ready to use the Rainbow Bridge to completely destroy the world of the frost giants. Ancient One stretched out his hand and used magic to arrange a ripple in the air, which showed the scene in Odin's bedroom like a screen. It was just when Loki had just killed Laufey, and then Thor arrived, and the two brothers confronted each other. The matter was just half done, How could Loki let Thor stop him? An eternal spear knocked Thor out of the Golden Palace, and Loki rushed towards the direction of the Rainbow Bridge. Qin Xiao's eyes followed Loki to the Rainbow Bridge, and he was about to watch the two brothers love and kill each other and destroy the Rainbow Bridge. But Ancient One whispered beside him, "Look here, the good show is here." Chapter 94. Your handwriting is pretty good. In Odin's bedroom, after the two brothers left, Frigga's panicked expression instantly turned into calmness. Odin, who had been lying on the bed looking weak, slowly opened his eyes. He sat up and sighed slightly. Frigga, who was standing by, stepped forward and gently patted Odin's shoulder. Thor went to Earth this time and came back looking much more mature. Loki's identity as a frost giant made him a little bothered. In addition, he always felt that you treated Thor much better than him. From childhood to adulthood, he has always lived in Thor's shadow. It is normal for him to be a little rebellious. He will slowly grow up in the future. The two of them spoke with deep affection, just like two ordinary old couples who worry about their children. Qin Xiao looked at the sky speechlessly, and then looked at Loki, who was manipulating the Rainbow Bridge to completely exterminate the frost giants. Is this just a little rebellious? This is extermination of the race, especially the race he was born into. Qin Xiao's mind appeared a famous internet meme from his previous life. He is just a child. Apostrophe, that's right. What bad intentions can a child who is only over 1,000 years old have? He just stole the weapons at home and wanted to murder his brother and then exterminate a race. Guyi took a look at Qin Xiao's expression and knew what he was thinking. He looked at Odin and his wife in the mirror with disdain and said, "You are too narrow-minded." Loki's bloodline is the royal family of the frost giants. Odin doesn't have many years left to live. If the frost giants are still there, how can Thor sit on the throne safely? Facing Guyi's eyes that said, "You should think about it carefully," Qin Xiao really felt enlightened. In the past, he just thought that Odin knew all this and acquiesced to the two children's mischief. Now it seems that this is definitely a big game played by an old fox. Deliberately ignoring Loki made Loki angry and killed Laufey in order to show himself. Not only did he kill the frost giants himself, but he also killed them all. Even if Thor stopped them, the frost giants would only survive from then on. The most important thing is that the frost giants hated Loki to the core from then on. From the perspective of the heir to the throne, Loki permanently lost a reliable foreign aid, and turned this foreign aid into his enemy, a mortal enemy. Let Thor go to Earth and form an alliance with Earth. Then Qin Xiao remembered that at the beginning of Thor 2, it seemed that Thor led the army to help the 9 kingdoms and several worlds to quell the rebellion. Conquer, form an alliance, destroy. Loki is the bad guy, Thor is the good guy, and most of the 9 kingdoms have easily become Thor's loyal supporters. Compared with Odin's calculations, Loki's so-called god of trickery is simply weak. Sure enough, there are no kind people who can sit on the throne of a king. In fact, you don't have to think too much. As the king of Asgard, Odin certainly has a side as a king. In fact, he also has a side as a father. But the father's job is not as good as the king. Come, take you to visit this successful king and failed father. Guyi stretched out his hand and lightly tapped on the mirror image, and the mirror image instantly shattered, revealing a portal. You entered Asgard before Thor came back. Why didn't you come to see your old friend first? Odin's voice came from inside the portal just after it was opened. Odin's title as the father of the gods was indeed not given for nothing. He knew it as soon as he entered Asgard. It's rare to catch up with a good show. I have to watch it carefully. Ancient One was not surprised at all that Odin knew her whereabouts. If there was any powerful person entering the earth, she would definitely be able to feel it at the first time. Hello, Supreme Ancient One. It seemed that this was not the first time Frigga met Ancient One. She smiled and greeted Ancient One, smiled and nodded at Qin Xiao, and left Odin's room. It's just 2 children fighting. What's so good about it? You didn't come to Asgard just to watch my fun. Odin waved his hand and said. As soon as the voice fell, there was a shocking explosion outside. Odin's momentum suddenly changed, and golden light shone all over his body. Qin Xiao instantly felt that the old man in front of him suddenly turned into the sun, not only with light and heat, but also with his endless power. It felt as if he could disappear into thin air with a slight wave of his hand. Damn it! Rainbow Bridge! Odin exclaimed, and disappeared from the bedroom almost instantly. Ancient One took out a fan and knocked on Qin Xiao's head with a bang, laughing. See, what is meant by 100 precautions and 1 omission. After a long time of calculation, Thor went too far. In order to stop Loki from destroying the frost giants, he actually smashed the rainbow bridge directly. This is definitely something Odin didn't expect. Ha 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 ha. Guyi was not afraid that he was now on Odin's territory, and laughed at Odin unscrupulously. Qin Xiao, who had just reacted to Odin's momentum, pulled away Ancient One's fan. Stop knocking, you are acting like a liar in front of me. After complaining about Ancient One, he finally realized what had just happened. You mean the destruction of the Rainbow Bridge was not in Odin's plan? Qin Xiao asked curiously. Of course, he is just an old fox. Who do you think he is? As the guardian of the Time Stone, I dare not say that I can see all the future completely. This old fox is just playing with people's hearts. How can he control all the details? Alas, what's the use of calculating it? Some things are destined. Qin Xiao sighed faintly. Oh? Guyi's bald head directly appeared in front of Qin Xiao. Then tell me, is it destined that the two of us appear here? Qin Xiao raised his eyes and glanced at Guyi's bald forehead, took a step back, and said guiltily, how should I know? Guyi was about to say something else when he saw a figure flash, and Odin came in again. But this time Odin did not show the confident expression just now, but a face full of worry and concern. Without saying anything, he asked Ancient One, Loki, maybe this is what Ancient One said about Odin's fatherly side. Having raised her for more than 1,000 years, Odin must have feelings for the proud third princess. Don't worry, he's fine. He'll be back after suffering some losses outside. Ancient One didn't hide anything and told Odin directly. Odin took a deep breath. It seemed that he suddenly discovered Qin Xiao. He turned around and spoke in Chinese. Throwing hammers will kill the whole family. My wife has her period every day. Your handwriting is good, boy. Qin Xiao, Chapter 95. Actually I have a twin brother named Qin Xiao. Qin Xiao remembered when he was in junior high school. He went to a boarding school. Their principal was short, fat and bald. All the students called him short and fat behind his back. One time during a self-study class, the principal passed by the window. Qin Xiao looked up and saw the principal walking past, so he called him short and fat. After calling him short and fat, he found that the principal was standing by the window and looking at him angrily. It was so embarrassing and scary. Then he was pulled into the office by the principal for 40 minutes of ideological education. This incident left a deep impression in Qin Xiao's memory. The current situation is almost the same as before. It's just that the short and fat principal in front of him has become Odin, the father of the gods. That, actually, Qin Xiao said with a guilty look on his face. Actually, this may be a misunderstanding. I have a twin brother named Qin Xiao. Unfortunately, a meteor fell from the sky last night and killed him. Really? Odin raised the spear of eternity. Okay, I admit it's me. Okay, but I think it's nothing. You have white hair and beard, you are old, and your wife doesn't care about her period every day, right? Qin Xiao was so nervous that he spoke with a lisp. When the boss is angry, another boss has to persuade him. Qin Xiao desperately winked at Guyi, and Guyi stood up to stop Odin. He advised with a nonchalant look. Relax, Odin, I think what Qin said makes sense. Just tell me which of your children is worry-free. If you give birth to another one, I guess Hela will be angry to death before she is born. That's right. Qin Xiao hid behind Guyi and echoed, shut up, you bastard. Not only did you insult my queen, you also cursed my whole family to death. Odin's eternal spear began to emit light. Guyi couldn't just let it go. He held Odin tightly and said seriously, Odin, the death of your whole family is not a curse. The death of your whole family is actually true. What? In fact, Odin was just trying to scare Qin Xiao with those two sentences. But Guyi's words hit Odin's heart. What does it mean that your whole family is dead? This is true, old friend. I'm not kidding you this time. I came here for this matter. I think we should have a good talk about the future. About the Earth and Asgard. Guyi's expression was more serious than ever. Before the two big guys had a formal conversation, Guyi opened a portal, and Odin directly shot Qin Xiao out with the Spear of Eternity. This portal was opened on the Rainbow Bridge. It was a gorgeous rainbow bridge just now, but now it has a big hole in the middle. Even the Rainbow Bridge temple has collapsed. At the crack of the Rainbow Bridge, there is a lonely and sad back. The cloak behind him was blown to one side by the wind of the endless sea, swaying in the wind. Oh my god, the Asgardian version of Bujin. Thor turned around when he heard someone talking, and was somewhat surprised to see Qin Xiao. Qin, why are you here? No, the Rainbow Bridge has been broken by Loki and I. How did you get here? Since you can come, doesn't that mean I can still go to Earth and see Jane? The big fool was not stupid at all. He thought of so many things the moment he saw Qin Xiao, who said that love makes people stupid. It seems that this depends on the person. If you meet a big fool, it may be a double-edged sword. Thor's sudden excitement scared Qin Xiao. Aren't you here to commemorate Loki? Are you posing like Bujin for so long because the Rainbow Bridge is broken and you can't go to Earth and see Jane? Then what are you doing smashing it? I came with the Supreme Sorcerer. She is discussing some things with your father. By the way, I have good news for you. Loki is not dead. The Supreme Sorcerer told your father. I knew it. Thor was stunned for 10 seconds, and suddenly jumped up and patted Qin Xiao's shoulder hard. I knew he should be fine. He is the god of trickery and the most cunning person in Asgard. How could he die so easily? It seems that Thor really has a good relationship with Loki. He is so happy that his face has many wrinkles. However, for the fact that Loki is the most cunning person in Asgard, Qin Xiao can only give him a mocking sneer in his heart. Odin and Frigga are not to mention. Even Heimdall, who seems to be conservative and inflexible, is far better than Loki in this regard. Too lazy to discuss this topic with Thor, Qin Xiao rarely comes to Asgard, so he pulls Thor to take him around. Knowing that Jemima was not dead and that he had another chance to go to Earth to find Jane, Thor was in a good mood and took Qin Xiao around the Golden Palace to act as a diligent tour guide. After wandering around Asgard for more than an hour with Thor, he had not even finished visiting the Golden Palace. He was pulled back by Ancient One and Odin. This time the place was changed to a magnificent reception room. Odin and Ancient One sat on the left and right, staring at Qin Xiao with a smile like an old couple looking at their son-in-law, or the kind of daughter who was a big fool and weighed 250 pounds. Qin Xiao felt that the hairs on his back stood up. These two old foxes smiled like chrysanthemums on their faces, and there must be nothing good. Subconsciously, he took a step back and asked vigilantly, "What do you want to do?" Odin looked kind and waved at Qin Xiao. "Come here, kid." "No, tell me what you want to say now, and don't call me kid. Few people who are called kid by you have a good ending. You can call me a bastard, but don't call me kid." Qin Xiao flatly refused. He just used the Spear of Eternity to hit him in all directions, but now he changed his face so quickly that it must be bad news. Odin was very upset, and it was Guyi who took over the conversation. "If you don't believe Odin, you should believe me. Come here. It must be a good thing." Guyi smiled calmly. However, in Qin Xiao's mind, these two are nuclear warhead level figures, so Qin Xiao is not willing to give in easily. "No. You two are laughing like the pimps and madams in the brothel who kidnap good women. I won't be fooled." Qin Xiao shook his head like a rattle. The next moment, Odin raised the Spear of Eternity in his hand, and Guyi's hand was shining with golden light. Come here, let's talk it over. Why are you so angry?" Qin Xiao ran over happily. The same thing happened to Ancient One and Odin. The magic and weapons in their hands disappeared instantly, and they immediately switched to the chrysanthemum face mode. Ancient One smiled at Qin Xiao and said, "You took good care of Thor on Earth. Odin decided to thank you very much, so he wants you to go to his treasure house and choose any item by yourself." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 Out of Control Flame. After entering Odin's treasury, Qin Xiao realized that sometimes some scenes in movies cannot be fully believed. When Odin was young, he conquered the universe. He conquered thousands of planets. How could there be only a few things left in the movie? In fact, The things in Odin's treasury are varied and rich, and the collection of the collector and guardians of the galaxy is not much less. Even the things that many collectors dream of can be found here. For example, there is a 3-meter-high glass cover in front of him, which contains a complete Groot tree man. "What is this?" Qin Xiao pointed at the tree man and asked. "This is a Groot. There are very few of them. When I was a child, my father arranged a teacher for us to have classes. There was a tree man among them. Groot language was our elective course. Later, when his life was up, my father kept his body. You know, it is basically difficult to see a Groot now." Thor, who was pulled by Odin to take Qin Xiao into the treasury, introduced to Qin Xiao. "He came to be your tutor, and after his death, he was made into a specimen and placed here. It's really awesome." Qin Xiao looked at the miserable corpse of Groot and looked elsewhere. There were all kinds of strange weapons and armors. Qin Xiao even saw 3 dragon-tooth swords. The dragon-tooth swords used by the Valkyries. "I really wanted one when I was a child. They were once one of the most powerful armies in Asgard, but unfortunately they all disappeared later for some reason." Thor was like a tour guide who brought tourists to a museum. Whenever Qin Xiao saw something, he would briefly introduce it. After walking around and seeing a lot of strange things, it was really eye-opening, but he didn't see the things in the movie. Qin Xiao asked Thor in confusion, "That's all? This is the treasure house of the father of the gods. There are no more powerful things, like the hammer in your hand?" "There are indeed not many artifacts. There must be some, but the restrictions on the use of those artifacts are too great. I'm afraid you can't use them. If you don't like them here, I'll take you to see them." As Thor said this, he went to the innermost part of the treasure house and pushed hard against the wall. This is the treasure house shown in the movie. It turns out that there is an inner storehouse inside, and all the good things are placed inside: the icebox, the eternal flame, and the infinity glove that is said to be a fake, etc. This glove, this size, is not suitable for ordinary people to use, and there are gems on it. What does it mean? Qin Xiao picked up the infinity glove and asked knowingly. "This is a glove that can help people control the power of the infinity gems. This was made by the dwarf king of Nidavi according to his own hand shape. He originally wanted to create a divine artifact that can perfectly accommodate 6 infinity gems to complete the highest realm of his forging. As a result, as soon as it was made, countless people in the universe who have the ambition to control the infinity gems hope to get this glove to control the infinity gems. In desperation, the dwarf king can only present it to my father, hoping that my father's reputation can deter those who covet the gloves." With the introduction of Thor, Qin Xiao realized that the gloves were real. Then the fake that Thor and Hela mentioned should refer to the gems on the gloves rather than the gloves. The dwarf king made it to prove his forging skills, and finally presented it to Odin to avoid trouble. "This is very reasonable, but I don't know whether it is a secret setting of Marvel screenwriters or a correction in this real world." Nodding without comment, Qin Xiao looked at the icebox again. "This is the artifact of the frost giants." Thor still patiently introduced it one by one. Qin Xiao felt the icebox. He couldn't activate it without the blood of the frost giants. Apart from the size of the infinity gauntlet, this thing is basically useless without the infinity stones. To be honest, it seems that there is really nothing in Odin's treasure house that he can use. Qin Xiao came to the side of the eternal flame while thinking. The next moment, something strange happened. Just approaching the side of the eternal flame, which was originally burning quietly in the vessel, was like someone suddenly poured a lot of fuel. The fire surged, and the flame suddenly jumped up more than 2 meters high. The range of the flame also instantly broke through the boundaries of the vessel. It expanded to a range of about 1 meter, and then the fire changed, and the whole ball of fire that looked bigger than a person rushed towards Qin Xiao. The huge flames rushed into Qin Xiao's mouth, nose, and even every pore on his body, like a swallow returning to its nest. The change was so fast that Qin Xiao and Thor were completely caught off guard. "My fucking hair." Qin Xiao just had such a worrying thought in his mind, and the flames had already drilled into his mouth and nose. It was like a spirit, swimming back and forth between Qin Xiao's pores and 7 orifices. Thor was completely stunned at first. He knew that this ball of fire was very dangerous, but he had been in and out of the treasure house countless times since he was a child, and he had never seen this ball of fire go wild. By the time he reacted, The flames had already drilled into Qin Xiao's body through his 7 orifices. He secretly said that it was not good, and subconsciously wanted to step forward and do something. Qin Xiao's body glowed brightly, and the whole person had turned into fire. The strange thing is that his clothes, skin, and even his hair were all intact, without any damage from the flames. Qin Xiao's experience was not so wonderful. The moment the flames entered his body, a ball of violent and hot energy directly entered his body. Compared with the Hulk serum he drank last time, this one was like the difference between a firecracker and a grenade. The rampage all the way directly tore his muscles, meridians, and bones, and no corner of his body was spared. Ah! With a shout, a flame gushed out of his mouth, melting the wall and opening a big hole. At the same time, under the ground of the Golden Palace, a rune symbolizing the power of the Asgard fire rule began to ride from somewhere underground. It broke through the ground and rushed straight to the Golden Palace. Damn it! Odin, who was sitting and chatting with Ancient One, shouted loudly, and his body suddenly jumped up and rushed towards the treasure house. Of course, Ancient One followed closely. When he arrived at the treasure house, he saw Qin Xiao turned into flames, floating quietly in the air with his eyes closed. Next to him was the stunned Thor. At this moment, a chaotic sound of breaking was heard, and a dark red rune went straight through the wall, breaking through the 2 layers of defense of the treasury from the outside and coming to the inner treasury. It flew straight towards Qin Xiao. No! Odin shouted. Stop! Odin, with golden light all over his body, stretched out his hand and grabbed the rune. Dash! It's Monday. Are you tired, office dogs? It's afternoon tea time. Have a sip of water and read a novel to relax. It will be time to get off work soon. Chapter 97, Divine Origin Rune. Odin was so fast that he almost instantly reached the rune. He stretched out his hand to grab it, but unexpectedly caught nothing. The rune that was so close to him had disappeared, and he was on a high mountain far away from the Golden Palace from the treasure house. Ancient One. Odin was really anxious this time. He stretched out his hand and took the Spear of Eternity in his hand. He was covered in a golden helmet and armor, and the cloak representing the royal family behind him also appeared. It rustled in the wind, full of murderous intent. Do you know that it is the original power of Asgard? I used it to suppress Hela. The rune had just arrived in front of Qin Xiao. Odin knew that it was too late to go back now. What's more, in front of the Ancient One, unless he killed her, no one could leave unless she didn't want you to leave. He said this with gritted teeth. Once Hela appeared, Ragnarok would come immediately. God knows how much Odin and even the entire Asgard paid to suppress Hela and delay Ragnarok over the years. No powerful god origin dared to be released. Only the so-called successor to the next king had a god origin of Thor. Others, such as the 3 warriors of Asgard and even Thor's fiancée Sif, were just goddesses of land and harvest. Just looking at the name of the god, you can tell that they are definitely not characters with super combat power, because all the powerful god origins were compressed into runes by Odin and turned into a formation to suppress Hela. Even so, facing Hela, who had the power of Asgard's origin like himself, Odin had to replenish his strength from time to time to barely suppress Hela as he was getting older and stronger. At this time, without a fire god origin, it won't be long before the seal of Hel is ready to move. Ragnarok. Odin is not fully prepared now, so he did not hesitate to put on a desperate look. On the other hand, Ancient One still looked calm. Odin, I understand everything you said. If you want to fight to the death before facing Hela who broke the seal, I have nothing to say. If not, calm down first and we will solve the problem together. Looking at Qin Xiao, after Odin and Ancient One appeared and disappeared again, Thor didn't know why his father wanted to stop the rune, but since Odin wanted to stop it, it must be the only way to benefit Asgard. So after Odin and Ancient One disappeared directly, Thor stretched out his hand without hesitation to hold the rune. It's a pity that the rune of the original power of the god of fire could not be stopped by Thor, who had not awakened the power of Thor. Before his palm approached the rune, a destructive fire power pressed directly towards Thor. This power was as violent and powerful as thousands of large volcanoes erupting at the same time. Thor subconsciously took a step back and retracted his hand. Just a step back, all the fire power disappeared. Oh no, I've been fooled, Thor was actually scared away by a simulated mental attack from a dead object. He cursed in anger and tried to reach out to stop the rune again, but it was too late. The rune scared Thor away and came straight to Qin Xiao, spun in front of Qin Xiao, and drilled into Qin Xiao's forehead. As soon as the rune entered his body, Qin Xiao's impression changed instantly, although his whole body was still on fire. But at the beginning, Qin Xiao was more like a container that was not afraid of fire, and the flames were flowing all over his body. But as soon as the rune entered, Qin Xiao seemed to be integrated with the flames, and the whole person seemed to have become the flame itself. This is the original power of the god of fire. How is this possible? Thor's eyes were full of incredible expressions. According to legend, a long time ago, in addition to the father of the gods, Asgard also had 12 main gods, who were the most powerful beings in the entire Asgard. Thor's own throne was one of them. But at some point, all the powerful gods of Asgard disappeared. Only his throne was left, and the god of light represented by Heimdall. Even though Thor asked Odin repeatedly, Odin kept silent. Thor thought that Odin had encountered some powerful enemies when he was conquering the universe. Not only were those main gods killed, but even the origin of their thrones was destroyed, except for his own throne of Thor. Who knew today? Then the rune just now was the origin of the throne of the god of fire, one of the 12 main gods. But why did it appear here? And why did it get into the body of Qin Xiao? An earthling, Thor, who had no idea what happened, sat down beside him and waited quietly for Qin Xiao to wake up since he failed to stop it. In fact, he had no choice but to wait. His power of Thor had not yet been awakened for the first time, and he could not stop Qin Xiao's state. It was possible to destroy it by force with Thor's hammer, but it is still uncertain what the incident just now means to Asgard. After all, Odin just stopped the rune, not directly killed Qin Xiao. Here, Thor helplessly watched Qin Xiao absorb the essence of the godhood. Odin and Guyi have come to a mysterious place under the Golden Palace. The space here is a bit distorted. A huge black portal emits a faint black light. The inside of the portal is also pitch black. It is impossible to see what is on the other side or what the environment is. Only occasionally can you hear the tearing roar like ghosts and wolves howling from the portal to tell others that the other side of the portal is definitely not a good place for leisure and vacation. Odin's face is still full of anger, and he waved at the portal. Golden light appeared above, and a huge magic pattern appeared in front of the portal, which was densely packed with various extremely complex unknown characters and various symbols. There are also golden chains composed of magic energy, tightly wrapped around this magic group and the portal. On each chain, there are runes similar to the dark red runes just now, the white and blue runes representing the divine positions of various rules and energies suppress these chains and completely seal the portal. On one of the chains without runes, the magic energy appears and disappears from time to time, and even the slightest cracks have appeared. Obviously, it corresponds to the divine position origin rune of the god of fire, but unfortunately it has been absorbed by Qin Xiao now, and this chain has obviously lost the source of its power, and it is estimated that it will not last long before it will completely shatter. At that time, the entire seal will completely collapse because of this point. The third chapter is here, and there will be another chapter in the evening. It happened that I went home from get off work, took a shower, had dinner, and then lay on the bed to read it. Am I considerate? Haha. Awkward smile. Chapter 98. Primary Awakening of the Fire God Body. Ancient One stroked his chin and stood in front of the seal, thinking, while Odin stood beside him with the Spear of Eternity, looking at him eagerly. He seemed to be ready to raise his weapon and fight Ancient One to the point of mutual destruction if Ancient One couldn't come up with a solution. After a while, Ancient One suddenly grinned, stretched out his right hand and snapped his fingers. Got it. You said, as long as this problem can be solved, I will give him the origin of a god. Odin said nonchalantly. That means I will stay and help you guard the seal forever, as long as you are alive and Hela has not completely controlled the origin of Asgard. I guarantee that there will be no problem with this seal. Odin's face lit up. This was not good. He lost a main god's origin in exchange for a supreme magician. This wave of blood profit. But Odin's smile had not yet fully spread. Ancient One changed the subject. But, you know, old friend, I have a great responsibility and I can't stay here forever, so this seal still can't be completely repaired. Odin's smile froze on his face. If you can't stay, what can you say? If there is a way, it's better not to say it. The eternal spear began to shine. Don't get excited. Listen to me. Qin Xiao has absorbed the origin rune. As long as he finishes absorbing it, his power can completely repair this seal chain. With my seal, there will be no problems within 10 years. 10 years should be enough. 10 years, it should be enough. Ancient One used a should, but it was an affirmative sentence. The seal can prevent Hela from coming out of hell, but the most critical thing is Odin's control over the origin of Asgard. As long as Odin reaches the moment of exhaustion, Hela will automatically gain control of the origin of Asgard, and a seal will no longer have any meaning. Odin understood what Ancient One meant. He couldn't walk for 10 years, of course he knew it himself. It was only because when Hela was born, Odin was too confident and directly gave Asgard's original power. The succession to the throne of Asgard was originally the inheritance of Asgard's original power, just like the company shares on Earth. If you give it to others, you can't unilaterally take it back. Unlike company shares, once Odin loses control, the original power will automatically belong to Hela, which Odin cannot change. It can be said that the curse of Ragnarok was planted by Odin himself at the beginning. 10 years, enough. I'm afraid it won't be 10 years. Odin sighed faintly. You forgot that I'm not much better than you. If I really have to leave, I may go ahead of you, but you forgot that we still have a chance. Gui stretched out his hand and pointed, and a mirror image appeared in the void. It was Qin Xiao, whose whole body turned into flames. Qin Xiao had been suspended in the air for nearly 20 minutes. From the moment that the mark entered Qin Xiao's body, Thor began to feel that the temperature in this inner vault was getting higher and higher. Before long, even Thor, the god of thunder, could not stand the high temperature. If the ice box had not spontaneously emitted a bone-chilling chill to offset the temperature at a critical moment, not to mention Thor, this house would probably have started to burn and melt. When the rune entered his body, Qin Xiao lost consciousness, but vaguely felt that the flames on his body began to merge with himself, and that feeling was like being in a hot spring with a temperature of just right in the air at a temperature of dozens of degrees below zero. Comfortable, transparent, all fatigue disappeared, and even his body could not be felt. Only the feeling of warmth wrapped around his whole body remained. It was unknown how long it took for Qin Xiao's consciousness to slowly return. Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the reward for Thor's exile mission to the earth, absorbed the eternal fire, and obtained the origin of the god of fire, one of the 12 main gods of Asgard. The origin of the god of fire and the eternal fire have merged, and the power of the god of fire has reached the primary awakening state. As soon as consciousness returned, the voice of the system sounded in his mind. 12 main gods, primary awakening? Qin Xiao asked in confusion. The system explained the settings of the 12 gods of Asgard, including the seal of Odin, to Qin Xiao. As for the primary awakening, it is mainly reflected in Qin Xiao's control over the flame. In the state of primary awakening, Qin Xiao can create and control flames out of thin air. He can also carry out long-range attacks within a certain range. The temperature of the flame is about 1500 degrees Celsius. As for the strength of the body, the system helped Qin Xiao integrate the power of all the serums in his body. In short, his physical strength and defense are about 60% of Hulk's, but because of the Asgard gods, his recovery ability is comparable to Hulk. Of course, the system did not work in vain, and collected 1000 points as labor fees. However, the 1000 points are worth spending, at least equivalent to doubling the physical strength. My body is not bad, and it's not bad to have long-range attack means. I will be a warrior and fire mage in the future, but the temperature of this flame is 1500 degrees, which is too low. As one of the 12 main gods of Asgard, it is not as high as the flame of the desperate virus. I also absorb the eternal fire, Qin Xiao complained to the system dissatisfiedly. The main function of the eternal fire is to help the Vulcan origin rune restore energy, so that the host can enter the primary awakening state as soon as possible and can initially control the flame. The eternal fire? That is a flame that the Vulcan cannot control even in the fully awakened state. The host wants to have such power now. You are dreaming, host. However, As the host's control over the flame improves, the power of the eternal fire will gradually appear, and the system will also add related products to the subsequent mall. As long as the host completes the task well, it will no longer be an unattainable dream to have the power of the eternal fire. The introduction of the system gave a sense of déjà vu of TV shopping. Since the power in the future can reach the level of the eternal fire, it means that this trip to Asgard is not in vain. Qin Xiao was quite satisfied. Slowly opening his eyes, the first thing he saw was the eternal flame, which was still in the vessel, but only a flame the size of a soybean remained. Qin Xiao thought he had cut off the eternal flame before, but now it seems that it is okay. At least there is still a little bit left, and the important props to awaken Searcher to destroy Asgard and defeat Hela in the future are still there. The eternal flame can absorb cosmic energy by itself and recover slowly. You don't need to worry about this. Just wanting to know what Qin Xiao was thinking, the voice of the Ancient One came from the side. Qin Xiao looked back and saw that Odin and the Ancient One were standing next to Thor. I don't know how long they have been looking at me. It's a little late. Haha, I took the kids out to play in the evening and came back a little late. Sorry. Chapter 99, The Fateful Gamble. Damn it, what happened? Coulson jumped up from his chair in a panic, with flames swirling around his clothes and hair. Qin Xiao was standing beside Coulson with a nervous look on his face, trying to help Coulson put out the flames on his body with his hands. But the more he shot, the bigger the fire got. Get out of the way. Sizzled, Tony shouted, picked up a fire extinguisher and sprayed it at the flames, saving Coulson's life. It was just that the collar of his clothes had been burned a little black, and as for his hair, it was Buddha's hairstyle, but it was a little sparser, with a little bit of the smell of burning pig hair. Fortunately, he was not seriously injured, except for his neck and scalp being burned a little red. There was no further burn. Qin Xiao had just returned from Asgard reinforcement, and there were countless messages from Coulson on his phone, asking him to return to the base in New York immediately. Qin Xiao directly asked Ancient One to send him to the vicinity of the base. After meeting with Tony and going to the base, and seeing Coulson, before he had time to tell what he had experienced in Asgard, the scene above appeared. Qin, you bastard who deserves to go to hell, if you want me to fulfill the bet, you can just tell me why you set fire behind me. Damn it, I just bought this suit. Honest man. Coulson's eyes were blazing, his face was as red as a monkey's butt, and with that burnt curly hair, it was indescribably funny. I didn't set the fire, I just walked behind you, believe me. Qin Xiao raised his right index and middle finger with an innocent look and swore to the sky. I prove that he really didn't set the fire just now, his hand even. Damn, your hand is on fire, Qin. Tony shouted in horror at Qin Xiao halfway through his words. On Qin Xiao's raised index and middle fingers, a small flame was jumping playfully. Oh, damn. Qin Xiao hadn't adapted to his new identity as the god of fire yet, so he subconsciously shook his fingers to extinguish the flames. You still say it wasn't you? Coulson jumped up and took out his pistol from the table. Calm down, Coulson, listen to me, this is an accident. Qin Xiao reacted instantly. Go explain to God, bastard. Coulson had no intention of listening to Qin Xiao's explanation. Bang! Tony used the fire extinguisher in his hand, which he had not put down yet, and hit Coulson's back of the head hard. What are you doing, Tony? I'm just about to explain to him, Qin Xiao said helplessly. He will really shoot. I heard that this guy spends most of his monthly salary on hair care. He will kill you. Man, he needs to calm down. But I'm not afraid of bullets. He can't kill me at all. I forgot about this. Sorry, I mean Coulson. How about we go out for a cup of coffee and come back later? Tony looked at Coulson, who had a big bump on the back of his head, and said with a little concern. Half an hour later, Qin Xiao sat down on the ground that was not afraid of fire with a depressed look on his face. Coulson, who had calmed down, sat on the sofa beside him, holding an ice pack on the back of his head, staring straight at Qin Xiao. The sad eyes reminded Qin Xiao of the woman whose husband died at the beginning of Journey to the West, conquering the demons. Questioning Tang Senzang played by Wen Zhang. Tony stood beside Qin Xiao, holding a cigar in his hand and turning it constantly. None of the three spoke, but Tony and Coulson kept looking straight at Qin Xiao. The weird atmosphere lasted for more than a minute. A small flame the size of a medicine bottle suddenly appeared on Qin Xiao's head. "Here it comes. I'll tell you, Coulson. Look." Tony asked Coulson to look at the flame on Qin Xiao's head quickly, and quickly put the cigar on Qin Xiao's head to roast it. When Coulson fainted, Qin Xiao and Tony explained what he had experienced in Asgard, including the fact that he had obtained the position of the god of fire. During this process, Qin Xiao's body had two small flames. After Coulson woke up, Qin Xiao explained it again, but Coulson would never believe that Qin Xiao's body would automatically emit flames. After waiting for a long time, until now. "You mean, seeing that Qin Xiao's body could really emit flames?" Coulson stood up and prepared to observe. "Auntie, believe me, I don't have a husband." "No, I mean, what do you want to ask? Didn't I tell you just now?" Qin Xiao was so immersed in the play that he blurted out the lines from the movie and quickly changed his words. "What I want to ask is, Odin sealed his daughter in hell, and hell is one of the 9 real kingdoms. Then if that hell comes out one day, the so-called 9 kingdoms will usher in an evil god who rules everything, and we will have a war, right?" "Yes, that's it, but Odin can still suppress it now, so we don't need to worry about this problem for the time being." Qin Xiao spread his hands and said. The flame on his head went out, and a cluster of flames appeared in Qin Xiao's crotch again. Tony was just about to light the roasted cigar subconsciously, but when he saw the fire, he instantly shrank back and pointed at Qin Xiao's crotch with a smile. "I seem to smell the smell of roasted chicken." "Congratulations, Qin. At least you don't need to turn on the air conditioner or burn the fireplace in the winter." "Shut up, Tony. Start your test quickly. I can't go out in this ghostly state." "Of course, the test must be tested." The flame on Qin Xiao's body is obviously caused by the fact that he has just started to master the flame and cannot fully control it. After being tested by Jarvis for several hours with the equipment specially built by Tony, Qin Xiao came to a conclusion. The location and time of the flame are all random, which may be related to Qin Xiao's emotions. The temperature is about 2801500 degrees Celsius, which is also relatively random. It can be seen how little Qin Xiao controls his own abilities at this moment. However, after analysis by Jarvis and Tony, as long as Qin Xiao continues to use the flame in the next period of time, this out-of-control behavior will gradually disappear in the next few days. This is consistent with the answer given by the system. In the next few days, Qin Xiao stayed in a special room built by Tony with fireproof materials. He kept using and testing his new abilities. So in the Avengers' secret base in New York, Qin Xiao could often be heard making some second-year noises. A small flame burned on the index and middle fingers of his right hand. Qin Xiao held his breath and stared at the wall in front of him. Big snake pheasant. A small flame that couldn't even burn a mosquito flashed on the wall. Wild bite. Ghost burn. 8 wine glasses. I just checked and found that the combustion temperature of kerosene plus air can reach 1700 degrees Celsius. The 1500 at the beginning was obviously not very rigorous, but later I saw that the flame of the lighter seemed to be only a few hundred degrees. With the principle of letting Qin Xiao gain an advantage in strength among the enemies of the same period and develop slowly, I didn't change the temperature of the previous chapter. This is reasonable. By the way, Black Widow's solo movie has been released in North America. The timeline of the story is between Captain America 3 and Avengers 3. I decided to bring this part of the plot to the front. After all, in order to bring Qin Xiao and Black Widow closer spiritually, we need to dig deeper into Black Widow's story and completely open up her heart. Besides, it's not bad to ask Qin Xiao to save an organization full of brainwashed and controlled female spies, isn't it? Chapter 100 Attack. It took Qin Xiao nearly a month to finally fully control the flame energy in his body. The effect of the primary awakening was really only satisfactory. Qin Xiao could control a certain part of his body to emit flames, or turn his whole body into a flame man. He could even spray a 2 or 3 meter long column of fire directly from his mouth. But it was still a long way from Qin Xiao's imagination to become a long-range turret fire method. However, during this period of time, Qin Xiao figured out a way to attach flames to melee attacks, which increased the power a lot. It can also be regarded as a kind of increase in strength, especially after he found that he could attach a layer of flames to the tank sword. Instantly, he felt like he had become the protagonist in the game. It's just that the Tang sword itself is powerful enough, and the 1500°C flame has no bonus to the power. After all, those who can't withstand the 1500°C flame will definitely not be able to withstand the power of the Tang sword. In Tony's words, your trick has no use except making a torch that does not require fuel. But no matter what, he could finally leave the base, no longer have to live a secluded life, and no longer have to sleep on a hard iron bed without even covering himself with a quilt. If it weren't for the combat uniform produced by the system, Qin Xiao might have to stay in seclusion naked during this period. Qin Xiao was in a very good mood today, very good, first, because he was out of seclusion, and second, because Black Widow was back. Coulson didn't lie to him. On the date of the cello concert, Black Widow really didn't have a mission from S.H.I.E.L.D., and Black Widow was indeed very interested in this kind of thing. Speaking of the matter, Qin Xiao would never come to such a concert normally, but men, when pursuing women, would always do something that would make you happy. Qin Xiao wanted to take this opportunity to completely open his heart to Black Widow, and finally reach the highest level of opening clothes and being naked. Black Widow was also unusually happy today. After Qin Xiao endured more than 2 hours of drowsiness and accompanied her to finish the concert, Black Widow no longer had the image of an agent as before, and excitedly pulled Qin Xiao out of the concert hall. She was interested in finding a place to eat and have a drink. Black Widow rarely had such an ordinary and leisurely day, so the two of them discussed and decided not to drive and walk first. It would be nice to stroll around casually and find something to eat. The security in Manhattan is much better than that in the boroughs of New York. At least there are still many pedestrians on the road after 9 o'clock in the evening. It was autumn and the night wind was slightly cool, which was very comfortable on people. On the sidewalk by the sea, young men and women would talk and laugh from time to time. Black Widow giggled and pulled Qin Xiao to sit on a bench next to her. "I swear I will never wear high heels again," Black Widow complained with her head down, while taking off her high heels without hesitation. The dress was slightly pulled up, revealing 2 slender calves, hanging on the bench, swinging her feet that were slightly painful from the high heels. The snow-white skin glowed slightly under the streetlight. Qin Xiao was a little distracted. "Does it look good?" Black Widow said to the dazed Qin Xiao with a smile. "It looks good," Qin Xiao praised sincerely. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt his neck tighten, then a pair of sexy flaming red lips blocked his mouth. After a long time, the lips parted. After savoring the sweetness of this kiss, Qin Xiao felt a little unsatisfied. He took the initiative and hugged Black Widow's neck. But Black Widow gently pushed him away. "I'm hungry. Go buy me something to eat first." "I don't know when." There was a cart selling hot dogs a few meters away. The smell of fried sausages was carried into his nose by the breeze. "Okay." Qin Xiao stood up and walked towards the cart happily. Almost just as he stood up, a sound of breaking through the air sounded behind him. Qin Xiao turned around subconsciously, seeing a small micro-missile whizzing towards the bench. The moment Qin Xiao hugged Black Widow, the missile had already hit the bench. Qin Xiao turned around suddenly. He couldn't tell whether he turned around first or exploded first. Anyway, he only felt a shock wave on his back, and the fragments of something unknown were hitting his back. Compared with these, the heat and flames of the explosion were almost nothing to Qin Xiao. In order to protect Black Widow, Qin Xiao stood still and endured the explosion and aftermath of the missile completely. As soon as the explosion ended, Qin Xiao quickly looked in the direction of the missile. A dark alley across the street, a rooftop on the opposite high-rise building. "Found you." A figure flashed on the rooftop of a building opposite. "Natasha, be careful. I'll go catch that guy." "Don't go. Hold me for a while." Black Widow grabbed Qin Xiao's collar tightly, stretched out a hand and gently stroked Qin Xiao's cheek and said. Qin Xiao then realized that something was wrong with Black Widow. She was pale and breathing rapidly. And why did his hand on Black Widow's waist feel sticky? It turned out that there was a shrapnel at least 10 centimeters long stuck in Black Widow's back, which was exposed. No one knows how much was inserted into the body. "Damn it, damn it, damn it," Qin Xiao cursed wildly in his heart. He didn't dare to stop for a moment. The mobile phone in his pocket was not damaged by the explosion. He didn't know if it was because of the combat uniform. Qin Xiao directly called Coulson. We were attacked. Natasha was seriously injured. There is a shrapnel inserted in her back. The exposed part is more than 10 centimeters long. I am holding her and dare not move. We need the most professional medical team. Hurry. I walked for about 20 minutes from the concert hall. It's on the beach. God knows the address here. Qin Xiao explained the situation directly in the simplest words. It was not difficult for Coulson to find this place. He just hoped that he could arrange medical personnel quickly enough. It'll be alright, Natasha. I'll hold you and stay with you until you're alright. Coulson will be here soon. You'll be alright. Qin Xiao put down the phone and said nervously, not knowing whether he was comforting Black Widow or himself. I'm fine, Qin. Better than ever before, but it's a pity that I haven't had a hot dog yet. I can't remember how long it's been since I've had such a leisurely meal on the road. As she spoke, Black Widow stretched out a hand and gently smoothed Qin Xiao's frown. Don't worry, I'm lucky to have met you. Maybe it's testing that I'm not qualified to experience the life and happiness of ordinary people. Since the incident in Budapest, As she spoke, a stream of blood gushed out of Black Widow's mouth. She slowly closed her eyes and fainted. Don't fall asleep, Natasha, don't fall asleep. Before the arrival of professional medical personnel, Qin Xiao didn't dare to move. He could only lower his voice and call Black Widow in his arms. At the same time, in a hotel a few blocks away, a middle-aged man was lazily sitting on the sofa watching TV. The picture showed Qin Xiao holding Black Widow and turning around at the moment of the explosion, and standing on the spot to endure the entire process of the explosion. The intelligence given by Hydra is wrong. Qin Xiao's strength is far beyond our imagination. He is not just a super soldier. I have stopped the operation. You arrange for people to leave the United States immediately. Natasha, I will find a way to solve it. Do you want to know what happened in Budapest? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.